And we're live on Friday. It is 10 p.m. in Ireland, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Diego here. You're all very welcome to this week's Lock-In live stream, few hours earlier to account for our very special Irish guests. So we will not force them to stay up until midnight, but rather get them when they have some coherence to them. It's not too late at night, and they're able to enjoy the show as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in as usual. Let me know where you are and what you're drinking. Tonight is a Dingle night. We're going to be diving into all things Dingle. I'm going to start by pouring myself a drop of Dingle while we're chatting and while we get started. This is Dingle Batch 5, the single malt. We'll be deconstructing this in a little bit and be joined by our special guest, Graham Coull, Master Distiller at Dingle Distillery. So let me know where you are and what you're putting into your glass. Nicholas joining us there from Massachusetts. John Keane from New Jersey with his Powers Gold. Great stuff. Jeff is representing Indianapolis. Lovely. We've got Florida. Kieran's got his lovely new glasses, putting Redbreast 19-year-old into christening them. Lovely. You got your stories and sips glass, Kieran. Good man. Up in New Jersey. Maureen is driving home from work. Get home safely, Maureen, and tune in with a drop of Dingle if you have it. John is joining us all the way from New Jersey with his Powers Gold. Mark's in Daytona Beach. So we are a few hours earlier than we normally are. We're going to, I'm sure, attract more of an Irish audience as well tonight who aren't gone to bed, who are just finishing up their Friday night drams on Twitter and sipping away on their whiskies and hopefully tuning in to us here as well tonight. So thanks as always for giving up your time and moving from the table and the kitchen table to the living room to the more comfortable seat with your whiskies to tune in for a good old session that we'll have tonight. Liam says, I'm assuming coherence at 10 p.m. That could be presumptuous. All right, he's on his best behavior though. That's good. Alan from the Irish Whiskey Society of America. Great stuff to see. Good to see you, Alan. You're up there in Boston. MC Drammer is here. We've got Darren has got Method and Madness single grain in the UK. And Jeff in Indianapolis, he's got his new Stories and Sips glasses. Great stuff. You're really christening them tonight. And my friend David from Washington is here. Good to see you, David. And I know you wish you were in Dingle, and we all wish we were in Dingle tonight. We're going to be diving into all things Dingle and all things single malt with our special guest in a minute or two. So make sure that we have everyone tuned in. So great to see people coming from so many corners of the world here. Andrew's got his 3 drams Dingle tasting set. Great stuff. So that's what we'll be using tonight. I'll talk a little bit about it. I know some of you have this set that was made available over the past few months from Dingle, and we're going to work our way through that. I'll share some of that, some more details of that in a little bit. And Dave Cummins, brand ambassador for Dingle, joining us as well. So he's representing digitally, and we'll have Graham Coull representing physically. Even though he's remote, he'll be representing physically from Dingle himself. MP's got Green Spot in his glass. Caroline's joining us from Southwest Ohio. Good to see you, Caroline. And Ed, good man, Ed, tuning in from Columbus, Ohio as well. Well, hopefully you've got something in your glass. This is a little bit earlier. Some of you might think this means that we're going to have a 4-hour session tonight, but this first 2 hours is just an extra session. But don't hold me to that. Don't commit me to 4 hours of a session at all tonight. We'll have a little bit of time with Graham and make sure he gets to bed in plenty of time as well, so we don't ruin the beauty sleep for anyone. Johnny's got a few drinks, having a few drinks early. Good stuff. Hi, Michael. You're joining us from Dublin. Good to see you all. And Greg's got a heavy measure of Paddy's in his Stories and Sips to a glass. Great stuff. We'll talk more about those glasses later on. So I have covered Dingle a lot on this live stream for good reason. I have also been lucky enough to speak with Mary Ferreter, for example, the general manager for our podcast over the past few months. And the reason that I do spend so much time talking about Dingle and heroing Dingle is because there's a special place in my heart for Dingle. And it's that one place where when Mrs. Stories and Sips and I go back to Ireland, it's that place where we can just tuck in, hide away, the most westerly point in Europe, really. Some of the best pubs, best people, best scenery, and it's a place that's just really special to us. And we're big fans of what they're doing in the distillery and big fans of all the people that work there who we've had the chance to get to know over the past few months and years. So it's a really special place to us. And I really enjoy sharing the story of Dingle and letting the team themselves share the story of Dingle as well. So you may have seen we had our interview with Mary Ferreter, the general manager, who's Dingle Distillery's founding mother, not so long ago. That's available on the website on storiesandsips.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. And also going way back, if I think back to when I started Stories and Sips a couple of years ago, one of my first videos was this. Here's a screenshot from the video where I had my big favorite photograph of Dingle in the background and did a whole episode on Dingle, back episode 10. So that's going back now almost 2 years when I first touched on that, and it got a great response. So we've been touching on Dingle for a long time now, and I'm sure we'll do a lot more with it. Really fortunate tonight that we're going to get to spend some time with the master distiller at the distillery, Graham, who'll be joining us in a second. I got to meet Graham a few months ago, last year when I was in Ireland. He had just moved to Dingle with his lovely wife, Faye, and I had the chance to spend a few minutes with them on my own whistle stop tour of Ireland when I was there last year, and really excited for his new approach and his philosophy and what he's going to do with the distillery, and we'll hear more about that. So tonight, if you have any questions about Dingle whiskey, if you've got any questions about blending, about maturation, about distilling, we have Graham trapped. He has to answer our questions or we won't let him go. So he's cornered. So whatever you want to throw at him, he's going to be honest and open about it. And if he doesn't know the answer, he'll just run screaming into the distance and we'll never see him again. But feel free to put up whatever questions you have there. Mary Ferreter is tuning in as well. Great to see you, Mary. We miss you all in Dingle. Chris says, very well placed glass. See, it's all about branding here. It's all about branding. Daniel says, look how young I look in that video. I do. This was pre-pandemic. Look at that. I even had my hair cut, had a jacket. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. So Chris says no turtleneck back then. No, the turtleneck only arrived last year in November, believe it or not, for Whiskey Live in Dublin. And I was trying to avoid wearing it tonight because there's heat in San Diego, but you wouldn't let me get away with it. So it's back. You can all rest easy now. The turtleneck is back, and it'll be making more appearances. So without further ado, let's bring in our special guest. Let's bring in Graham Coull, Master Distiller at the Dingle Distillery. Graham, you're very welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I know it's late, and I always hate asking people in Ireland to join me this late at night, but I really appreciate your time this evening.
No, it's not a problem. It's 10 p.m. So 10 p.m. on a Friday night in Dingle is still relatively early on in the night. So I'm good to go.
How's Dingle looking? Is it starting to reopen again now? Over the past few days or weeks, I think there's been some improvements, have there?
It is. I think in the last week or so, we've seen some of the restaurants reopen. They've been allowed to reopen, and what we've also seen is some of the bars collaborating with the restaurants, so you can actually go out for a meal now and get the beer from the bar. So the bars are probably 2 weeks before they can open on their own, but Dingle being Dingle, they think about it, and they've come up with a great solution where you can eat and drink the best of stuff.
Dingle will always find a way, no matter what happens. There'll always be
definitely.
Well, clever Kerry people will always find a way out of any situation. For those of you who are tuned in and are perhaps picking up on the fact that Graham does not have an Irish accent, but you're still determined to stay tuned in despite the Scottish accent. Graham, tell us a little bit about your background. You've been a long time in whiskey, only a short time in Ireland. Tell us where you've been before Dingle and how you ended up here.
Yes, yeah, definitely no Irish accent, and probably not going to pick it up either. I think the Scottish accent has been in me for over 50 years, so I don't think I'll lose it. But the Scots and the Irish have a great relationship, so we've been welcomed with open arms in Dingle. For those of you that don't know my history, I have previous I worked in Scotch whisky for 25 years, and I've just seen Omer Fritzl. Fritzl has just joined, and I wait for his comments. But yes, I've worked in Scotch for 25 years. I started off at Glenfiddich and worked there in Balvenie, Caninvie, and then I moved to Glenmurray 14 years ago, and was a master distiller at Glenmurray there for that time. So yeah, worked a long time in Scotch whisky, and moved across to Ireland in October of last year.
When was the first time, Graham, that you came across Dingle as a brand? I mean, I know Scotch whiskey is famous for its rugged, the locations, its rugged locations and island locations, and Dingle has some similarities to that, I suppose. But how would it have come across your desk or radar?
Yeah, I think I just have to say, Irish whiskey itself was certainly coming across the radar in Scotland. There's much more awareness of it in probably only the last 2 years, where you see the recent releases, and there's a strong Twitter Irish crowd as well who spread the word quite vehemently, and I managed to get in tow with them on Twitter, and that certainly raised my knowledge and awareness of Irish whiskey, and where it was coming from and where it was going to.
It was a certain gentleman called Ross who first gave you your first Dingle.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. There's I've Ross to thank for my first Dingle. He sent me a sample.
He took over
quite a bit before I'd even known about Dingle or even thought about moving to Dingle. So I suppose these things are meant to happen. And that voice just is my wife Faye, who
the real boss.
Yeah, the real boss, basically. Yeah.
Give us a wave there, Faye, so people know that it's not just a ventriloquist's voice.
she's had her hair done, so she could actually come in on shot now and not frighten everybody.
Oh, you're more than welcome to join, Faye. You're more than welcome to stick your head in there anytime. You can only improve the screen, put it that way.
True, very true. There's a dodgy.
So you
can see.
Yeah, anything's going to be an improvement on this turtleneck anyway, whoever appears on screen. So feel free to jump in, Faye, anytime. So when you came over to Ireland late last year, straight into it with the distillery, a picture here of the distillery for those who've not been there before, a remarkably understated building and very, I suppose, deceptive in the sense that what goes on in there is quite groundbreaking, and one of the first new independent distillery that opened in Ireland back in 2012 in more than 100 years. When you first saw the distillery, did you think to yourself, well, I thought this was a purpose-built distillery, built from the ground up. What's going on here? What have we here in this large building that I see in front of me?
Yeah, I'd done some research before I'd come, so I think if you stepped into Dingle Distillery without having known anything about it, it probably would be a shock to the system. It's like turning the clock back probably 30, 40 years if you were in Scotland. It's stripped back to the basics. There's no automation. What you see is what you have, and it is, as I say, it's basically in a shed in Dingle, and which was an old sawmill. It is. So it's basically hold on, Faye's.
I'm having technical issues.
I'll wait.
Stereo sound.
Yeah, stereo. Okay, back to it. Yeah, so it was a refreshing to see, because it reminded me of when I first started in the whiskey industry, and that's why many of the distilleries were set up, and it was all manual valves, and the people working the distilleries had input on everything that happened there. So it was, I suppose it was, going almost in my whiskey terms, going back to my childhood, and I enjoyed what I saw, and then I was taken to the warehouse, and when I saw the maturing stock, that's really what won me over, because see such quality of casks, and I was starting to think, yeah, what can I do with this already, even on the first site. So it was, yeah, won me over.
I was going to ask you, what was it that made you decide to make that move? You could have finished out your career in Scotland and retired and sat back with the kids not far away from you there in Scotland, but something attracted you to Dingle, and so it was a lot of the maturing stock was one of the big reasons, was it?
Yeah, definitely, and also the fact that the point that the distillery is at, it's 7 years old now, heading into its 8th year. Just an exciting time for a distillery as it moves into a more mature phase. And I just felt that I could help develop the distillery over the next 5-10 years, and really help define what Dingle is. They've done a really good job, a really good start. As I say, the whiskey they've laid down is excellent. So it's in some ways it's made my life very easy. I just need to steer the ship for the next 10-15 years, hopefully.
Maybe that's even more pressure, that all you have to do is steer the ship
well,
rather than build the ship from the ground up.
It's never, nothing is predictable, and I think this year has made that even more clear to everyone. So we have to, even in whiskey, you can't just drive off in a direction and keep going. You do need to stop, take a look around, and maybe change direction. So you've got to have what I do with whiskey is try and keep my options open with what I do, so that you can adapt if need be.
I.e. make some sanitizer.
Yeah, like hand sanitizer.
Yes, yeah, and great job in Dingle responding to the need for hand sanitizer early on in the coronavirus. You were quick out of the gate with that. I know you worked hard to get approval and figure out the legal side of things, right?
Yes, you have to do it. You have to do it right. You're dealing with a health product, so there are no corners to be cut. So we pushed through to get the various regulations that we had to get, and the various licenses that we had. So we've managed to supply the local area and the local businesses. And just this week we've been handing out what we're calling care packages, which are to the businesses that are reopening, and giving them some sanitizer and some dispensers so that they can get a head start.
That's right.
Because there's a lot of expense in restarting businesses at the moment.
I know,
and it's difficult enough. So if we can help, then we will.
And you've opened the doors of the distillery again, which is good to see. Our American audience will be surprised that there are countries that are actually opening things and not closing things. But Ireland has been working hard to contain COVID-19, and so we're delighted to see the reopening slowly and bit by bit. So that's great. I mean, that's got to be a sign of hope that you could open the doors and let people in.
Oh, it's great, because Ireland, as I say, has opened up the country, so people are travelling. And people are desperate to travel and get out of their own homes and do something. So it's been good to be able to offer something in Dingle for them to do, because we do get a rainy day now and again here. So it's nice to come in undercover and do something. So we've been able to do that. We've slightly limited the numbers, but the experience is the same. You still get a dram of whiskey and a chance to experience the sights and the smells as well.
I've got a short video here of the distillery from my last trip.
Yeah, so you've just gone left to right there, spirit still, intermediate, and then the wash still there on the end. So that's the 3 stills for the triple distillation.
Put those up again.
Yeah, so spirit still.
And it's tight, it's compact, it's hot, but it needs to be.
It definitely is. It's a shed, a metal shed, so it heats up an awful lot. The distillation is right next to the fermentation, which you're just seeing there, the washbacks, and also the mash tun as well. So it's you get all the sights and smells in one very small area.
I remember when I did the tour last year, one of the guides was mentioning the the natural growth of, there's a bacteria that grows inside a distillery that is like a little fur on the inside of the walls. Tell me what that is again. I forget the name of it.
Right, it's a fungus basically. It's got a long
Fungus.
name. Aspergillus something blah blah blah.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically it's a fungus that thrives on alcohol, which probably is a bit like everybody watching.
Don't we all?
Yeah. It probably dates back more to when in the early days the casks were stored in that warehouse, in that distillery building as well. So it's where the maturing stock is. So that fungus is there, and it thrives on the angel share basically that's evaporating from the casks. So the casks are now.
It's a good sign.
It's a good sign, yeah, healthy sign, and you will see it at all distilleries. But now we've got a warehouse which is about a mile up the road, just to the north of the distillery. And that's where we're now storing the casks, because we've outgrown the distillery building itself.
So our Irish audience will be far more familiar with Dingle as a brand than a lot of our American audience. We're hoping to change that. We want more people to understand the story and what's happening in Southwest Kerry. But my first interaction with Dingle before I even really got into whiskey was through the gin. So I've been living in the States now for 14 years. I remember coming back to Ireland and seeing everybody walking around the bars with really fancy, big bulbous glasses filled with a clear spirit, and I know shaving of cucumber or something in the glass. And it turns out it was gin, and it was mostly inspired by Dingle gin that really kind of brought back the craft, or established the craft gin craze in Ireland, and to the point where Irish bars had not just drinks menus but cocktail menus and gin menus, which surprised me. So the gin and vodka are a big part of the business in the distillery too, aren't they?
Yeah, most definitely. The great thing about the gin and the vodka is that they developed sales early on and brought money back into the business, which could then be reinvested into laying down whiskey spirit, which is it's a more expensive thing to do in a longer term game. But they also demonstrated that the distillery had an art for distilling as well. So I think it proved that a quality spirit could come out of such a building, and gave people confidence that the whiskey would be good as well when it came of age.
So in Scotland, Graham, you're more used to the different styles or regions of whiskey than Ireland is, but there seems to be certain microclimates in Ireland that are perhaps evolving or appearing, or they're becoming known, and Dingle seems to be one of those. With just got that unique, be it the Gulf Stream or whatever it is about the damp conditions in Dingle. What makes Dingle unique for distilling?
Distilling, the most important thing is the water. You can't make whiskey without water. So, we have our own well. We have a rich supply of pure water to use. Once you make the spirit, then you have to mature it. And the climate in Dingle is excellent for maturing whiskey. Ideally, you want something that's never too hot and never too cold. And Dingle certainly, fits that bill, and the dampness and the sea air just all helps to create, a great whiskey.
No shortage of water from either the ground or the sky in Dingle. So if you're ever stuck, you either look up or down.
Yeah, although about a month ago, there was a threat of a drought, but Mother Nature has certainly caught up in the last few weeks, so we're back to where we are. The grass is perfectly green now.
I can't wait to get back there. I was on Twitter during the week, and I had mentioned how I had received this package in the mail, and I received it just a few days too late for a tasting you had done. And this is this pack here, which is from 3 Drams, which is a new initiative by Irish Malts. And 3 Drams is something that Dingle has embraced as one of the first customers of 3 Drams. And it is this set of whiskies that will arrive at your door. and will be paired with a tasting. And in this case, what we have here is a set of the component whiskies that have gone into Dingle's single malt batch 5. So batch 5 contains component whiskies that have been matured in 3 different casks that have contained 3 different liquids. And this pack neatly sends us each of those so that we can taste the flavor contributions, understand what, be it a bourbon or a Pedro Ximénez or Madeira flavor profile tastes like, and then what it all tastes like in the final bottle or in the big bottle that we have here, batch 5. So I'm fascinated by this deconstruction because it's helping me understand why I'm getting a certain nose or why I'm getting a certain flavor profile. Why did you guys decide to release this, Graham? What was the idea behind it?
Well, I think it's twofold, really. The 3 drams concept was dreamt up by Irish malts, and they looked upon it as a chance for people to try different whiskies. So in the future, it will be, you may have 3 or 4 whiskies within the box, and they may be from 3 or 4 different distilleries. So it's a chance on, one evening to try different styles of whiskey. So that was the idea. And when we spoke to them, we approached them with the idea of doing the deconstruction, because we can almost do that 3 or 4 different styles ourselves from one whiskey. So it worked really well, and we were quite happy to be the guinea pigs in the concept, and really it's been very popular. We've done this twice now, once purely for Ireland and once for wider afield, and the demand for the packs has been great. So it's something that's really worked, and I think given the current circumstances as well, anything like this is welcomed by any whiskey drinker.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely. And when would it'd be very hard to get a chance to taste these individual components, because most will never make it to market. They just go from vatting into the bottle, and then we never get to taste them individually. A few questions already coming in about that, which I'll just briefly answer before we get into these. 3 drams is a new initiative by Irish Malts. Irish Malts are an online store for Irish whiskies and gins and vodkas and spirits, and they do ship to the United States and certain markets in the United States. They are restricted and dependent completely on the laws in the United States. So don't go and give out to them because they don't ship to your state, but they'll ship to as many states as they possibly can. And 3 drams is their new initiative. So you can go and I don't think they've officially launched, but you can go to 3drams.com and you can register your name and your details. And when it does launch, they'll let you know, and they'll be able to ship to you in the United States as well. And yes, it is a great idea, and I'm delighted that we get to try this today. So these are all the components that go into the latest release of Dingle Single Malt. Graham, tell us about so there's a number of different styles of whiskey that come out of the distillery. This single malt is one of them. Tell us about, there's pot still and a cask strength as well?
Yes, since the very beginning, Dingle has produced the 2 styles, single malt and pot still. Single malt and pot still both being triple distilled. As a Scotsman coming in, I've ruffled it up a little bit and brought in some of that malted barley that smells of smoke this year. So we're producing a little bit of peated Dingle this year just to make it interesting. So yeah, in the future there may be 1 or 2 more styles to come through, but the backbone of Dingle has been pot still and single malt triple distilled. It's
interesting to note, and it's worth noting for the audience, that there is a Scotsman's name on more bottles of Irish whiskey than any Irishman that was ever born in the name of John Jameson. And so the fact that we have a Scotsman coming in here introducing things like smoky barley and peat to the mix, we shouldn't be afraid of it. While I'm still not on the peat bandwagon, we shouldn't be afraid of the invaders coming in with some ideas. It's not worked out so bad for us in the past.
No, it's the great thing about whiskey is you can get to try things, and you may not like it, or it may be your thing, but there's a whiskey out there for everyone. So why don't we talk through the components of this, Graham? What's in this? The 3 components that go into the batch 5. Do you want to lead us through this and tell us
kind of hold my hand as I open these up?
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, so I think first thing to say, really, getting more than one or two cask types in a whiskey is quite unique, and it's one thing you're seeing quite a lot of in Ireland because of the age of the whiskey coming through. It does help to combine different cask types to bring out the best in each one. So within batch 5, there are 3 components, and the cask types are ex-bourbon, Madeira, and Pedro Ximénez, the sweet sherry. So three casks might come together, and it's for me, it's all about trying to get a balance on the right flavors and character from each one, because they all have their different characters and different aspects that you want to pull out. And you know, for me, it's trying to get the ultimate being that the end result is better than the sum of the sum of the 3 parts is better than the individual parts. So that is really interesting. I'm also working with all of these casks that are obviously full maturation casks in that particular cask type. So you're dealing with 3 quite robust flavors. So it's not like marrying casks that I would be used to in Scotland, where you're maybe using first fill, second fill, third fill casks, and you've got some strong flavors and some weaker flavors. You're actually combining things that are strong characters in their own right. So it's a different thing, but it's an interesting challenge to do.
Would each of these whiskey components have aged for the same period of time, or would they all have aged slightly differently?
Pretty much the same time. You know, you're looking at here. You know, Dingle is 7 years old, so the whiskies in the glass are around about the 6-year-old mark. They might vary within a few months, but you're trying to try and keep the age as similar as possible.
Okay, great. So I've got the first one here. So what's the first component that has gone in?
Okay, I'll just pick it up. I was cradling the batch 5 there, so I'll put that down and join you with the which is the ex-bourbon component.
Sláinte.
Cheers, Sláinte. You know, maybe 80 to 90% of the maturing stock of Irish whiskey or Scotch would be in ex-bourbon casks. At Dingle, we're a bit different. We're much probably heavier on the sherry element. So around about 40% of our maturing stock is ex-bourbon, and 40% is sherry, and other types of cask make up the rest. So we don't have so much of a heavy reliance on ex-bourbon, but it's still an important component, and it really works well to give a sort of light citrusy element to it. With ex-bourbon, you get a creamy of vanilla and toasted coconut kind of characters, but really it's there to give life to the whiskey. I think a whiskey matured in a bourbon cask is really what whiskey is all about, and it gives you that lovely spicy edge as well. So you know, I'll just have a nose, but yeah, nose is creamy, a little bit of pepper there as well. And when we get to the batch 5 at the end, I think the bourbon cask is the one that gives the nose to the batch 5. You really get up front at the beginning.
I still have my little batch 5 here, so my nose will be in and out of glasses now.
Yeah, and that's the great fun of the deconstruction, because you jump back and forth. It's probably the hardest tasting to lead, because people need to do it their own way and go back and forth. It's not one you can go from one whiskey to the next and lead people through it. It's really much about your own experience and working out what you like, but also in your head working out how all the flavors come together in the final whiskey.
if I was in the fertilizer business, I'd know the exact components that have to go into a bag of fertilizer. I'd say 10, 10, 20 or 10, 30, 15, where it's got different components in there that are proven to do certain things. Whiskey, it would seem, is more of an art than that kind of a science, is it, when you're trying to select?
Yeah, I think it's definitely not a science, because you can have your own preconceived ideas. And on batch 5, I had my own ideas that more of the Pedro Ximénez component would work, and I quickly found out once I did my experiments that no, I had to cut back on that. It just didn't balance at all. So yeah, you have to keep your mind open and try different things and also share it with people as well. Get other opinions, because it's not always the best just to stick with what you think.
That way you can pass the blame if it doesn't turn out the way you want it as well, right?
I quite often pass it to my wife, Faye, to put it under her nose. I won't tell her anything about it and say, "What do you think?" And I either get with that, you get a blunt answer. It's either good or bad. So it's fine to share, and the lads at the distillery, and well, you'll know that lads is male and female, but everybody works at the distillery. I like to share with them the work as well, because it's at the end of the day, it's their whiskey as well. They made it, so it's nice to get their opinions on and they can see how it's developing as well.
And a lot of pride in Dingle too, for those that work in the distillery, having their town's name on a bottle. I know since day one, it's been a huge source of pride for the town, hasn't it?
Oh, huge! Huge. Hopefully, it's put Dingle on the map for another reason, as well as what it already was there for. But yeah, I think definitely a pride, and the fact that Dingle is now worldwide as well. It's spread the name. It's a great thing for the town.
Tell me, Graham, do you share or reveal the percentages of each that has gone into the finished product, or is that a trade secret?
No, it's not a trade secret, and what I do tend to do is hold back until a certain time, because I like people to work it out for themselves. Or
good idea.
But no, I'm quite happy to be open about it. And in this batch 5 here, you have 45% bourbon, 45% Pedro Ximénez, and 10% Madeira in the mix. And I think it's important to be open about that as well. But
I stole your thunder too early.
No, you're okay.
On the nose, I definitely get that creamy. It is not as I don't get any sense of this spirit forward nature to it on the nose at all. It's very creamy, very velvety, very warm on the nose.
It is, and Dingle is evolving. It's I say it's only 8 years old, because in distillery terms, there's a long way to go, and you'll see the different cask types evolving over time. And early on, probably the sherry casks were a bit more further on than the bourbon casks, but I'm now feeling that at this age, the bourbon casks are now coming into their own. So when we hit double figures with Dingle, then it would be it would be very nice to see a bourbon cask release on its own, and then you can really see the distillery character shine through.
It was very forward thinking to not just use bourbon though out of the gate. The fact that you mentioned 40% bourbon, 40% sherry, that was a well-informed decision early on to be aging stock in sherry casks.
It was, because to be honest, you're probably more than doubling your costs straight off the bat, which when you open a distillery isn't the easiest thing to do. But no, and also a large percentage of Pedro Ximénez sherry, which you don't see so much of. You'll see more Oloroso than Pedro Ximénez normally. So we've got lots of things to play with lots of ingredients to use going forward. So it's about continuing that in a way, but also working on it to diversify the cask options as well. And that's what I'm actively working on, is trying Dingle in other things, just to see how it responds.
And one of the questions we got was, we've got so far, is related to the source of all the whiskey, and whether it is all distilled originally in Dingle. And of course, all Dingle products are distilled, aren't they? In Dingle, there is no sourced whiskey that contributes to your single malts or your pot stills.
No, not at all. No, it's 100% Dingle. What we're drinking is 100% single malt from Dingle, and that's been the decision to go forward. And again, not the easiest decision to make, but we're at a point now where we don't need to even think about that. It's all we're doing is looking forward with the Dingle stock that we've got.
And am I right in saying that you're distilling, or you're putting into barrels, about four casks a day are being filled? Is that the amount, or the approximately, that you're distilling?
Yes, yeah. It's average about 4 casks per day. It's about 1,500 casks per year.
Which is boutique, isn't it? Yeah.
It's boutique. It's hopefully big enough to that we can at least reach markets that and spread the word on Dingle. But yeah, it's definitely not a huge volume, that's for sure.
And we've started to see, I think it was batch 3 was the first Dingle that made it to the United States, as far as I remember. And now batch 4 is in the United States. And then this batch 5, which we'll get to, we're building to it, that might get to the United States before the end of the year, fingers crossed.
Plan is that it'll be there before the end of the year. So apologies that it's not there now, but for anybody watching, batch 4 is available in the States, and it's definitely worth a try. And if you can get hold of a batch 4 and then compare with batch 5 when it comes along, because I think batch 4 and batch 5 really are starting to hold their own in whiskey terms. Batch 4 is got a sherry influence and also a port influence in there, so lovely to compare and contrast the two together. But
I'm a massive fan of the fortified wine components, like in whiskey, and I love how that softens a younger spirit too, and adds layers of complexity that don't come just from age, but come from that beautiful mixture, the right mixture of fortified wine.
That's definitely, and that's what you need to do with the younger whiskey. We're still in single figures, and that's why we're mixing several cask types together. If you wind the clock forward for Dingle to another 5 years' time, you'll see much more Dingle in just one single cask type, whether it be bourbon or sherry, because the flavor will be there, and the cask in itself will have a roundness and mellowness to justify releasing it on its own. But at the moment,
very nice.
At the moment, we've got the best of both worlds just now. We're working with first fill stock, so although it may only be 6-7 years old, because it's all first fill casks, you're really looking at something that is more like a 10 or 12-year-old whiskey, and
it does taste like that.
Yeah. And we aim to continue to do that up till 12 years old. I think we'll always be working with first fill casks.
Okay. There's a question here from Brian, who asks, have you found the looser regulations, I suppose, compared to Scotland around wood? How have you found those? Have you tried other wood types since you've been at Dingle, or are there some trade secrets here you can't give away?
No cider yet.
No cider, no. Yeah, I made a small name for myself in Scotland by trying to use cider casks for maturing, and got a rap over the knuckles for it. So, but no, yeah, definitely working on that. There is more scope in Ireland to do different things, but I'm not here just to play around and experiment. I'm trying to build foundations for the future. So it's all about kind of looking at what we want to do and laying down the right stuff, rather than playing too much. So yeah, but definitely looking at, I've experience of working with wine casks. That interests me a lot, and so the
no iron brew barrels or anything. Finding
no
those.
iron brew, but I see they drink quite a lot of Buckfast over here, so maybe we'll try that one as a collaboration.
Go up to Galway. Yeah, plenty of those bottles and barrels in Galway, I'd say.
You're 52 nearly, and you've never drank Buckfast. I don't think you should start
I must
now.
admit, I've never tasted Buckfast.
Oh, you'll have to try. We'll have to get you some.
Try it once.
Jeff asks if is that a Celtic whiskey shirt your wife is sporting? But of course it's not. Faye, you don't have a Celtic whiskey shirt on you, do you?
No.
Dingle Distillery.
No.
Flying the flag.
We always fly the flag.
Brian says that cider cask was fantastic, worth the rap on the knuckles.
Oh, that's nice.
It was, because it did work. I tried it at different ages, and there was a sweet spot that it was a finish. So the whiskey was 8 to 10 years old, and that was the sweet spot that worked. So I have the opportunity to maybe try that here as well with a cider cask, and I definitely will, because I think it's the two flavors do work well together.
The Irish should be very slow to embrace too much change now. Like down in Dingle they'll stick to their guns and stick to their roots. They want it done the original way. Bring in those fancy cider casks. Will that go down well?
I know. You have to approach them gently.
In plain sight, in view, full view.
Yes.
So let's move along to the next component there. I'm after draining my glass of the first one, of the bourbon component.
Yeah.
So there's another component. So component number 2 is next in the box. So what's this one?
Component 2 is a Madeira cask, which is a much rarer cask, much harder cask to get hold of. But like hen's teeth, they're really difficult to get. There's obviously not enough Madeira wine drunk in the world to generate that many casks. So when you do see these casks, it does prick up your ears a bit, and you get interested in what they can do. Madeira, in terms of whiskey, the flavour it tends to impart is like burnt sugar and a nuttiness. So you've got to be careful, because underlying there's a dryness as well. So you can't go too far with the Madeira, especially with the younger whiskey. Madeira lends itself probably to a longer maturation and older whiskies. So you have to be careful, but it does give a flavour that you will not get from anything else. And I do enjoy working with them, as I say, because of the rarity value. It means they're not 10 a penny, and to be able to use spirit like that again for the guys at Dingle to have sourced Madeira casks early on was something really nice and really good. So yeah, I've enjoyed using it, and this is the first Dingle batch that Madeira casks have appeared in.
Graham, I don't know a lot about Madeira casks. I'm learning more about sherry and port and their influence on whiskey. Would Madeira casks previously have contained what would become commercially available Madeira, or are they just seasoned for the use by whiskey companies?
Thankfully, these were casks that had held Madeira, but again, Madeira is moving more towards seasoned casks because the availability isn't there, and it would be lovely to use traditional casks all the time, but going forward, sometimes the whiskey industry has to adapt, and it's adapted with sherry, and it will adapt with Madeira. If you want that flavour and character, then sometimes you have to go and almost produce the cask yourselves. So the Madeira is being sacrificed to create cask for whiskey, as is sherry. But it's not a flavour you want to lose at all.
It's a beautiful sweetness. I love a Madeira contribution. Burnt sugar is a great descriptor for it.
You also show off our new Dingle.
I'm drinking from the new Dingle glass as well. It's a lovely stem.
Oh, look. Oh, very nice. Very fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see any of those turning up in my mailbox. Strangely, that's funny how you have it.
You need to contact Mary Ferreter.
We'll do a swap. We'll swap over some glasses.
She would. Oh yeah. I'm sure she would.
Yeah. While you're mentioning that wonderful lady, I think you need to just acknowledge her one more time.
Well, Mary's one of the reasons. Well, probably the big reason that we're here is Mary Ferreter. Her love for Dingle and the distillery is all consuming, I would say.
Mary's great. We love Mary.
Once Mary gets her grasp of you, that's you. You're definitely dingled.
That's it. Mrs. Stories and Sips in the corner there. She hears the words Mary Ferreter and says, "We love Mary."
But yeah, I think Madeira.
Just to make you jealous, we're heading out for dinner tomorrow night with her and Paddy Joe, so we'll raise a glass to you both.
Say hi to Paddy Joe as well.
Absolutely.
I will do. So the Madeira, I think, on the nose is lovely. You know, it's got that burnt sugar demerara nuttiness. As I say, the only downside, and there's a downside with every cask type that you use, and probably for Madeira is a slight dryness, which is nice as long as you can balance it out and don't overdo it. So hence the reason that the Madeira component is the smallest percentage in the batch 5, but you know it still manages to punch its weight and give character to the final mix.
Graham, do you think there's an age at which the Madeira contribution becomes too much in a barrel, or is it more about the quantities rather than the time period?
I think it's more the quantities. You know, if we'll revisit Madeira casks in, you know, maybe another 5 years, and I'm sure then it will be, you know, it'll be a wonderful whiskey. It really will stand on its own. It just will have mellowed, and everything will be in balance then, because that's the thing about whiskey. As it matures, the balance changes all the time, and it hits a sweet spot, then it maybe goes off slightly, and then it hits another sweet spot further on in the maturation. It's not, you know, it's not a straight line improvement all the time. You do catch it at different times. So that's the great thing about whiskey. It's not that predictable. Yeah.
That's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
There's a lovely lemon. There's a lemon nose to it and a dryness on the nose. It's just, I just can't get enough of a Madeira contribution. I've been told that there is in one large distillery in Ireland, 30-year-old pot still whiskey that has been aged in Madeira, sitting in a corner of a warehouse somewhere. I can only imagine the lusciousness of a 30-year-old pot still from Madeira.
It's interesting you say lemon there, and I'm getting it's like lemon zest. It's not something I pick out, would have picked out normally, but yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's a nice character, and you need things like that, because the lemon zest will then, when it combines with the bourbon and the citrusy vanilla, those two go together, because these three cask types in the batch 5 need to work together. They have their own character, but you need overlap as well. And it's that kind of character that helps.
So these two now already are giving me, if I combine the first two, I've got a lemon meringue pie, and before we put sherry in later, which would ruin it altogether. But there's that lovely dry yet sweetness and a burnt marshmallow almost on the top.
Yeah. And you can imagine, you know, if you think bourbon is vanilla and toasted flavors, you've taken that a stage further and you're into burnt sugar and almost a caramelization. So those two go together, and then the Pedro Ximénez is a different thing again.
Daniel wants this to be released as a single cask on its own. It's that good.
Yeah, it will do one day, definitely.
Definitely don't use my audience as your test for anything, because many of them have been drinking for 5 or 6 hours, and the things they'll suggest now may make no commercial sense, but they'll tell you anyway.
And I recognize a lot of the names, and I see what they write on Twitter, and so I take everything with a pinch of salt.
I have a question here from Quincy, a friend of mine in Columbus. Do you see some overlap or change in the Irish whiskey and Scotch whiskey cultures or consumer markets? What differences or similarities do you see, Graham?
I think there's definitely overlap just now, because those people that would have only drunk Scotch whiskey are now standing up and taking notice of Irish whiskey, because it's becoming interesting. It's becoming of an age where it's starting to hold its own. I think what you could find is that Irish whiskey, in some ways, might overtake Scotch whiskey, especially once it hits the 10-12-year-old mark, because you'll have you'll have a better quality of cask in Ireland than you will have in Scotland on average. So, as I say, much more first fill cask, much more second fill cask. So your 10 and 12-year-old Irish whiskey will be much richer than your 10 or 12-year-old Scotch whiskey.
Why does Scotland rely more on the second, third, fourth fill barrels as opposed to Ireland's emphasis on the first and second?
Just the nature of the business. It's Scotland has been in there a long time. So, and you also got grain whiskey in there. So you will use casks 2-3 times. Some will use 4 times. Whereas Irish whiskey, out of necessity, is you're producing a lot more than you're selling, so you have to buy new casks every year. So you always have to buy first fill casks in. So as long as that continues, then you'll see a higher percentage of first and seconds in Ireland. And at Dingle we plan to try and maintain that, so that at the younger age that you're getting the best of the first fills, and then use second fill casks for the older whiskies, because that's when they come into their own. It's almost it's a longer, slower maturation, which the second fill comes through very good in.
Please keep buying Madeira casks though, because that sugar, I just love a sweetness that comes from fortified wine.
Oh, needs a cup of tea, so is it?
Well, Madeira's, yeah, and the thing with Madeira, you can get quite a variability cask to cask. It's, whereas an ex-bourbon cask, you kind of know what you'll get at the end. Madeira, there'll be some that are stronger, some that are much weaker. It's just a bit more random. Wine casks in general are a bit like that. But that's the joy of it,
It is. So the short answer, Quincy, to that question is Ireland is about to overtake Scotland. You heard that from a Scotsman, and that's it.
No.
No. I could say
selling the country down the river.
Yeah, but here I'm a Scotsman in Ireland making whiskey, so
you know where your bread is buttered at this stage.
Do that, yeah, and the butter's better in Ireland as well.
That's it. This is lovely. I love the Madeira contribution. Many years ago, I was in Madeira, which is a small little Portuguese island off the coast of Africa, and there's no real reason for many people to get there. Actually, it's a popular British tourist destination, and was certainly 50 years ago, even more. I used to work on cruise ships, and we'd call into Madeira. And back then, I had no interest in what that island was producing in terms of its spirits or its wines. In fact, the most interesting thing to me in Madeira was this tourist attraction on the island, where you would go to the top of a hill, and local men dressed in funny costumes would pull you down the hills in baskets, wicker baskets, down the hills, down the sides of the mountains in Madeira. And that was the biggest attraction in Madeira back then. But I was paying no attention to their spirits or their wines.
No. And really, Madeira it's cooked. That's the secret of Madeira. It used to be, they used to put the wine on ships, and it was subjected to high temperatures, and that's where the character of Madeira comes from. It's the the fluctuation in temperature that creates the sort of nuttiness and the burnt sugar that you get coming through.
Madeira would be a very rare drink over here in the United States. You know, sherry to a degree, but Madeira even rarer. So it's hard to truly describe what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's difficult. I try and explain and say it's somewhere between Oloroso and Pedro Ximénez, but you're probably not doing it justice there because it's not the same. But in terms of sweetness, that's probably where it lies.
Love it. So there's been no Dingle release that's just bourbon and Madeira, is there? There's been bourbon and sherry.
This is
no bourbon and Madeira.
No bourbon and Madeira. I think I think the next time you'll probably see Madeira would be on its own, which will be something to wait for, and it'll be quite special when it does come out.
You heard it here first. Madeira on its own could be happening.
Don't let him hold you to that.
We record all of these, we record them so that when somebody denies it later, we can pull up the timestamp. Andrew asks, if the heat creates the burnt sugar flavor, what would that come from on the Madeira?
It's just really the heat. The barrels were basically put out in the sunlight, so they were quite extreme temperatures. So really, caramelization of sugar is what's happening. Because the wine itself has still quite a high residual sugar count. So when you expose it to heat, then the natural thing is for sugars to caramelize. But
I love it. All right. I'm keeping one eye on the clock and one eye on my glass because I know how late it is in Ireland, but I'm sniffing away here.
We're fine.
It's not past the witching hour yet. We've nowhere to go.
I have to ask. Nowhere to go. Yeah, but I'm more worried about your good wife than you. I want to impress her, not you. So I want to make sure I'm keeping to the rules.
I'm fine. I've got a glass of wine.
She's fine.
All right, good stuff. All right, so that's the Madeira contribution. My favorite so far. And whoever has any questions for Graham, feel free to put them in the comments. Steve says he loves a good Madeira, drank a lot of it while living in Spain. And V. Satui in the Napa Valley makes a great one. I'll have to look for some. Can you call it Madeira if it's made in the Napa Valley, I wonder?
Well, I believe there is Madeira. I don't know if the word matured is right, but definitely, you'll find sherry and Madeira matured in the US. So Madeira style, you would say, probably. But
Madeira style, yeah. Because they stopped shipping sherry from Spain in, was it 1980s, in barrels, and they insisted and had a legal change to make sure it could be bottled in Spain. And so the maturation ended on the Iberian Peninsula.
So you'll get something very similar, but obviously the name can't be used.
Right. Okay, so is it time to move on to the third component?
Yes, if you're ready.
I am. I work fast.
You're doing well.
Oh, one more question before we jump into that from Daniel. He's not too far away from me. He's in Cork. Will we see any distillery single cask releases in the near future? Preferably Oloroso.
Yeah. Where we're moving to, up till now, the Dingle has seen batch releases because it's evolving over time, and the age of the whiskey is obviously increasing as we release the batches. But we will see the batches probably start to disappear, and we'll move towards more of a core range. And then to supplement that, we'll have smaller releases. So that may be as small as a single cask, or it may be 1,000 or 2,000 bottles, and that will be definitely single cask types. So I keep saying yes to Daniel. I don't know. I think I've promised the world to him tonight, but
yeah, he'll be standing at the distillery gates in the morning with his checkbook.
He'll be there.
I think it's Elliot, Peter, and Liam that need to be on this conversation.
Yeah.
People love a good single cask, and they love the exclusivity of it, and they love the scarcity of it. And people love, I think it's good for everybody when you can release single examples of something that's taking place, no different than these components, but to say, you know what, we had a great reaction to the Madeira, let's go down that road.
Definitely. It gets people speaking about your distillery and everything that you do, and generates a lot of interest. So no, I'm a great fan of single cask releases. So yeah, we will be there. Maybe 2 or 3 years down the line before you see a single cask, but definitely some smaller releases coming through, hopefully in the near future.
And we should remind ourselves just how young of a distillery Dingle is. 2012, the stills were first commissioned, so that's 8 years, not even 8 years, 7.5 years. That means that, I mean, there's very few distilleries at that age releasing single casks because they don't have the mature stock, or they haven't built up enough of a stock to be able to go down that road. So we're really only getting started seeing what's coming out of Dingle, I'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And I say, we're at an age as well where very difficult to produce a single cask that can stand out on its own or stand alone, because they need a helping hand. That's why we're combining different cask types together. One single cask matured for 8 years won't have the complexity that maybe you're looking for.
Yeah.
Once you get into double figures and beyond, then that's where they really can come out and stand on their own.
That's a nice answer from John, comparing batch 3 and 4 side by side, and 4 is a step up.
Yeah.
It would be really nice to hear his input about 5 to see
the
maturity of the distillery.
I think definitely there's been a step up from batch 3 to batch 4, and I think batch 4 does stand on its own well, and batch 5 hopefully does the same. But we're getting to a point where you can compare them side by side, and actually some people might prefer batch 4 to batch 5, and that's great, because it shows that your whiskey is developed far enough for people to compare and contrast.
Every year that I've tried the new batch, I've felt the same, that every one is a step forward, and the distillery is getting to understand the spirit more, and the spirit's getting to understand the wood more, and it's all ending up in the bottle as a lovely progression over the years. And that's why I like that everything has been labeled a batch, because it is a progression until you reach that core range. So it is an interesting side by side. When you eventually get to 12 years old, we'll have one big hoolie of a night where we'll have 10 or 11 batches side by side, and we'll book a hotel in Dingle.
I was off to say, you need to be in Dingle that night.
Yeah, that could only happen in Dingle.
What's your I'll put this question to the two of you as I'm pouring my the Pedro Ximénez component into my glass. But the question comes from Johnny McNally. What's your favorite pub in Dingle? And maybe you each have a different favorite pub, or maybe it's the same.
Okay. This is difficult because you don't want to upset some people in Dingle, but favourite would be Curran's for a pint. It's a wonderful old school pub.
Curran's
would be for me.
Well, I have kind of two. I have to say the lads in Dick Max, for me, they are just so passionate and welcoming that they are fantastic. Finn, Derek, Dara, the whole lot of them are fabulous. But the lads in Foxy John's as well, you step back in time, you're going into a bar, the left side's a bar, the right side's a hardware store, but equally McCarthy's,
John Benny's.
Yeah.
Great
Where do you stop?
Paddy Bones.
And we love Paddy Bones. Yeah. So there's no favourites, but we're working our way around them all,
That's the best way to do it.
It's a magical place, and the welcome from everybody is surpassed by anywhere else in the world for me. Totally.
I love Curran's as well. Curran's was in that Netflix documentary, I think, wasn't it? The Irish pub. Curran's appears in that. Yeah.
You have to go. I mean, it's but you know, Dingle is full of pubs and they're full of character. It really is a special place.
And we mustn't.
We'll be back for a pub crawl.
Lot more pubs we have not named, but are equally as good.
When we were down there last year, we were a week in Dingle, and you know, we'd hop around the different pubs. But every night I wanted to go into Dick Mack's, kind of end the night at Dick Mack's, get a nice whiskey, find something maybe I hadn't had before. And by night number 3, as we're walking up Green Street and we're about to hit Dick Mack's, and Mrs. Stories and Sips turned to me and she's like, "Are we going in there again tonight?" I was like, "Yeah." And every night.
It's a great, you know, and it's, to be fair to Finn and Peter, they've built up a great whiskey selection, Irish and
they have.
And so, you know, it's definitely a destination bar for a whiskey fan as well.
An absolute, must see. And of course, Foxy John's and Hardware, and you know, buy a pint of Guinness and a tire and a bag of nails. Only in Dingle.
You can get rat poison there as well.
Make sure you're drinking out of the right glass.
Exactly.
Let me see. Okay, question from Joe Moore. Joe is a stalwart representative of Irish whiskey. He works at Dublin Airport in the Loop. He hopes you're both well, Graham and Faye. Question for Graham: have you found any significant, surprising difference in producing Irish whiskey compared to Scotch?
Not really. No, you know, pot still was definitely a different thing for me. The mixed mash bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely peculiar to Ireland, and that was different. Triple distillation took me a week or two to get my head around, because it's definitely much more. Well, it's more complex than double distillation. It sounds as though it should only be one step more, but it definitely is not. It's more than that. But really, it's amazing the similarities as well, which is great.
Not too far away.
Not too far away.
Sure, the Irish taught the Scots how to distill, and aren't you only bringing it back with you now to Ireland?
Oh.
Yeah.
Here we go.
What about the PX?
Go on to the PX. Quick. Maureen has a question there. She wants me to remind her of the name of the documentary. It is literally The Irish Pub. Just search on Netflix for The Irish Pub, and you'll find Curran's and a bunch of others. And I'd advise you to turn. I know, Maureen, you're up in Canada. Turn on the subtitles there for the good old thick Irish accents coming through. That even I needed a subtitle for some of them. So it's The Irish Pub. All right, so we're moving on to the third component now, which is one of my newly favorite components. And that's Pedro Ximénez. Graham, tell us, what is Pedro Ximénez?
So Pedro Ximénez is a sweet sherry, sweetest of the lot. The flavor you get from Pedro Ximénez is really raisins, really raisiny texture, maybe almost Christmas cake flavor, but just a real sweetness at the end. It really does give a real sweet kick to any whiskey you introduce it to. So it's it also introduces color as well. Pedro Ximénez, lovely sort of dark golden color to it. So Dingle Batch 5, well, all Dingle whiskies we don't add any coloring to. So what you get in the bottle has come from the cask. So when you see and
that was one of my questions early on, wasn't it? Before we came on live, I asked you about that, and you're very quick to tell me correctly that there's no color in this at all, because I was surprised at the color differences in the three components there. But Pedro Ximénez is so much more darker than the others, so that's where the color component is coming from in this.
The Pedro Ximénez is the one giving the color, but you know, color is not everything. If the whiskey is just purely ex-bourbon cask, it will never get beyond a light gold color. So you know, don't go searching for dark color all the time. But if there's a sherry influence there of any description, then you are looking for a deeper deeper colour altogether.
Can I butt in, Barry? You turned the bottle beautifully round there, and I just want to celebrate the picture on the back of the bottle. It's a painting by Liam O'Neill, and it's in the background you can see the sleeping giant, one of the Blasket Islands. And for us coming here, the coast of Kerry, and for me the sleeping giant is my most favourite part of driving the coastline.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like when you go out Sleigh Head and just see that vision of that island, sleeping giant, and then Great Blasket. There's nowhere like it on earth, is there?
No, and
No, there isn't.
We come from the coastline of Moray in Scotland, and we thought it was beautiful, but coming back here and seeing those islands over the coastline, it's dramatic, and it's romantic, and it's just, it takes your breath away completely.
Have you been out to the Blasket Islands yet?
No, we haven't, but
No.
but Mary and Paddy Joe went 2 weeks ago, so maybe we'll get to go soon.
I saw her pictures online, and
Yes.
and I know when I was last in Dingle, I was asking her about it because she said that herself and Paddy Joe hadn't been out there that often in their whole lives, living in Dingle. Yeah.
No, it's the daft thing is you don't do things on your doorstep.
That's right.
You need to be a tourist to do these things, but we still see ourselves as tourists here, so we will do all these things.
You have to do these things before you consider yourselves fully local, or otherwise you're too good. You're too good to do them after that.
We're what they call blow-ins.
We'll always be a blow-in.
We're a blow-in, and we know we all.
That's true.
But never.
Air blow-ins are good crack too. All right, so PX and Pedro Ximénez. It's a fortified wine. It's a sherry made of a couple of different grapes. Is it Moscatel is one of them, and there's another grape I can't remember.
Yeah,
goes
definitely.
into it.
Yeah, and they're basically sun-dried grapes. So if you imagine sun-dried raisins, that's what you're getting in the wine. Because of that sun nature, they get color. They get darker color. That comes through. It also gives you get in the whiskey a kind of almost a cloyingness, a viscosity there that you don't get with other sherries. So a rich sweetness, cloyingness, and color. It just it's a great add to batch 5 because it gives so much. But I think, as I said, you can go too far with it as well, especially at this age. So I went higher percentage and then trimmed it back to what I thought was the sweet spot for the mix.
There's on my palate a mixture of sweetness and dryness. I'm getting that unmistakable sherry contribution, absolutely the raisins, but then there's a kind of a dry finish to it as well. Would that be normal for PX?
Yeah. Again, a bit like the Madeira. If there is a slight downside, and it's not really, but this dryness with any wine cask, you get this dryness, which doesn't build up with age. Other flavors will come through, and the dryness will certainly not build up. Whereas the downside, not of a first fill bourbon, but if you use bourbon cask too often, in their later years, they can be dry. So that's why you want to use first, second fill bourbons wherever you can. So it's dryness in a whiskey is nice, but you don't want to overdo it.
Would I be right in saying that there were some of the founding fathers' casks that were either aged fully in Pedro Ximénez or were finished in Pedro Ximénez?
All fully matured. Yeah, no finish.
Fully matured.
Yeah. The founding fathers, up to 5 years, their casks remain untouched, and then at 5 years they have the decision to whether to mature for longer or to bottle, or even to think if they want to transfer to another cask type as well. But first 5 years.
And was I think it was. So I was in Dick Max with Mary and with Paddy Joe last year. Mrs. Stories and Sips and I were in there, and she said, "Have you tried the latest Founding Fathers release?" And I said, "Which one is it?" She said, Ash's Restaurant, which is not too far away from me there. I think that was Pedro Ximénez, fully matured, I think.
Yeah.
I
which is
don't know
lovely.
if maybe
It's
that's
lovely to
something that you could explain, Barry, about the Founding Fathers, because it's part of the distillery history.
Happy to touch on it, but obviously you're the experts in Dingle. But back in 2011, the call was put out for interested people who wanted to both support the establishment and building of a new distillery down in Dingle, but also get their hands and their name on their very own barrel of whiskey, their very own cask of whiskey, something very unusual at the time, back in 2011. And the call was put out, and I remember it well myself. I was in Ohio, living there at the time, and as a daily reader of the Irish newspapers in Ohio, I saw this pop up. I saw a mention of this Founding Fathers initiative, and I thought it was a remarkable thing. And it took it took a lot of people's imagination. It grabbed their imagination around the world. But there were, I believe, 500 Founding Fathers and Mothers committed to investing in a cask that in turn funded the building of the distillery and allowed them to have their own cask that matured for at least 5 years there, sitting there quietly, first in the distillery and then in the warehouse. And some remarkable names of people and groups that came together to fund it, and a remarkable show of solidarity for something Irish, new, a risk, something you could be part of. But the Founding Father that I always point out to people when I'm in the distillery or when I tell the story is that Midleton Distillery is one of the Founding Fathers. So one of the only competitors to Dingle when it was built was the Midleton Distillery, but they wanted to support the building of the distillery, and did they buy a barrel themselves? And love that story. I probably missed a lot of the key elements there, but Faye, you'll fill in.
Well, no, I think, we have to celebrate the life of Oliver Hughes, who unfortunately is no longer with us, and we didn't get to meet him, but we've met the family, and we've fallen,
it's very much a family distillery, but the Founding Fathers are the wider family as well, and without them we wouldn't have had the step up really to start the distillery, but also to keep it running before any
absolutely
other revenue came in. So really, really important, and
and for me it's the romantic side of the distillery. Oliver had this idea to build a distillery in West Kerry, and then getting people's interest to come on board, and
absolutely,
and the support of Liam and Peter, the company. It's fantastic, really, the history.
It is a uniquely Irish story too, and I say that because I'm Irish. You could say in Scotland you have similar, but I like to think it's a uniquely Irish story. But it is great that you had these visionaries and these risk takers like Oliver Hughes and Peter and the others who took a big gamble. I mean, you look around the Irish whiskey world now and you see 31 distilleries. When Oliver Hughes looked around in 2010, 2011, he saw 3 or 4 other distilleries, and that was it. And they were all big and established and multinational at that stage. To build an independent distillery in a place where it's not easy to get to and where distribution can be difficult, that took a leap of faith, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. It's not. It wasn't the easiest choice at all. There were no easy decisions made there. But it's history has proved that it was the right decision, and the distillery is very strong, and looking forward to the next decade, and we can only go forward.
Absolutely. Like, Dingle is only getting started. For those of you many of you here, actually, we've got some people on the line who are Founding Fathers, which is great to see. We've also got people here who've been here or been to Dingle on honeymoon, who have been to Dingle on vacation, and who are planning to go to Dingle. It's one of those things where it's sometimes I almost bite my tongue not telling people about Dingle because I'm afraid it'll get overrun, because it's almost like it's that thing you want to keep.
Yeah.
But then I realized, sure, didn't I go in and ruin it as well by visiting it? So others should enjoy it too.
No, definitely. That's definitely a place you should at least visit once in your life, if not more.
Of the 500 founding father casks, Peter asks, how many do you still have? So a number have been bottled. Some maybe have been sold back to the distillery.
Yeah. I say some have been bottled, but and some have been sold back. But I would say the vast majority are still there. Most are opting for further maturation or at least thinking about what they want to do. As I say, there's no hurry with whiskey, no rush. So, and I like to help the founding fathers, and I'm quite happy to stick a nose into my nose into the sample and give them my view of where I think the whiskey's at the time. But they're all, yes, they're all wonderful casks. So it's not a difficult decision to take, really, whether to bottle or not. It's your own choice. It's your own circumstances as well. And when do you want to?
It is a romantic story, as Faye said too. And I've seen people mention online, like I've seen tweets where people have said that, who are founding fathers, that they've reached out to you, Graham, and asked you to sample and tell them how it looks, what it's like, what your recommendations are. What a remarkable opportunity that was for those who were smart enough, and I wasn't smart enough, to get in it early on, but that you can be part of this story where somebody gets access to somebody with your experience and can ask you, is my whiskey ready yet? Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Well, yeah, because people will have bought these casks, and they bought them to support the distillery and support Oliver and everything that went with it. Many of them at that time wouldn't have really been whiskey fans at all, or whiskey aficionados. So there maybe are some of them sitting there thinking, well, what have I got here? What do I do with it? So it's like anything else. It's always nice to get a second opinion and a little bit of a help. And, I'm well used to whiskey of this age. I've worked with it a long time. And I think, it's just putting people's minds at rest that they don't have to panic, and you can be patient with whiskey. You just wait. It will not go wrong. So, don't make any rash decisions. That's the main thing.
It's in safe hands. You're taking your time. You're not rushing anything.
No, why not? But then again, if you particularly want to drink the whiskey and you want to have it, then push on.
Have at it.
Yeah, have it. It's.
Lorcan mentions doing the Dingle tour a few years back. He said Joe was our guide, great character, still my favorite tour. Lorcan, I did the same tour with Joe years ago. Before I was really into whiskey as I am now, still on a journey, of course, learning every day. But back then, I was more interested in the gin, honestly, when I first did the tour. And I remember it was myself and Mrs. Stories and Sips, and there was one other girl on the tour. There was only three of us, and it was in the middle of winter. And Joe was the tour guide, former guard from Dingle. And he was bringing us through, and halfway through the tour, the other girl had to leave, and it was just me and Mrs. Stories and Sips left. And we started chatting with Joe and having a bit of crack. And he brought us up to the tasting area, and he said, I'll bring you out some gin and some vodka to taste now. He said, but I don't have any whiskey, because he said it's been in such demand. We don't have any here. So I said, no problem. So we started tasting away anyway, and we got into the crack. And then he knew we were a bit of crack as well. And he said, hold on a second, maybe I'll find a bottle of whiskey here somewhere. 5 seconds later, he appears with a bottle. We stayed there for hours sipping away. I love that about small Ireland, where there's characters that are still able to go off the script,
Yeah, definitely. Joe is a character. He was in the distillery a couple of weeks ago. I was speaking away to him, and you don't need to speak much when Joe's around. He can he holds the stage.
He can. He said, "Oh, you're living in America. Well, let me tell you about Donald Trump." He was quick. He was straight off the bat.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
All right. So So we've gone through now the three components, and I've seen some people who've been following along with the components themselves. We had one mention here. Andrew says that the Madeira for him wins on the nose, but the taste of the PX is the winner for him.
Okay. Yeah, and that's good to see.
I would flip that for me now. I would say that the nose of the PX wins for me, and the taste of Madeira wins for me of the components. And I'd find the bourbon to be the most neutral of them all, surprisingly, for its kind of spice and vanilla. It seems to be the most understated of the three of them, isn't it?
The bourbon has a lovely soft nose, actually, for bourbon at that age, and I think that shows how well advanced it is. It's a balanced nose. It nose is older than you may think, but definitely we need that in there to. It definitely helps the final mix.
What would be your favorite, Graham, of the three components yourself?
I have a soft spot for bourbon cask because I think that's the distillery shining through. So I think if the more bourbon cask you can have in there, then it shows the real quality or spirit. There's nothing in there to mask it. So I have a soft spot for Madeira and PX as well. But yeah, I would champion the bourbon.
So now those three together, you mentioned earlier, these components come together, 45% bourbon, 45% Pedro Ximénez sherry, 10% Madeira. Help us visualize how this vatting or marrying, because we don't call it blending technically, do we? When it's one style of whiskey, when it's single malt, you don't blend single malts, but you marry the components together, right?
You
so as to avoid confusion.
Yes, yeah, we tend to avoid the word blending because it then confuses with blended whiskies, and so it's easier to give it the term marrying. And because you're combining essentially whiskies of the same spirit, they don't need to marry too long because they'll combine well together. So we tend to just marry just for a few weeks together before bottling, bring the cask types together. So before that, there's a selection process as to which bourbon casks we'll use, which Madeira and which Pedro Ximénez cask we'll use. So that's the initial selection. Then we'll combine together in the percentage mix that we're looking for.
So these are married together in a blending in a vat. They're not in a stainless steel vat. They're not further matured together in wood.
There's no further maturation going on. It's just purely bringing the three components together and making sure that you've got a consistent mix and that they're given time to combine together. Okay.
And then they find their way into their second from last vessel in their life before they reach the glass, and that's the bottle. And that finds its way around the world. So what we have here now is batch 5, which is the culmination of all these three components together in those quantities, becomes batch 5. So this is the beautiful marriage of it all.
That's right. That's the end result. And as I say, hopefully you can pick out the three cask characters in there, but also you can imagine that combining the three together does enhance the overall experience as well.
And which one do you feel is predominantly apparent on the nose then of those three, Graham?
I think the bourbon kicks out on the nose. You maybe don't get it on its own in its own glass, but when it's within the three, there's this spicy edge which really does come out. And quite a light, you get the citrusy notes as well, which are not really going to come from any other cask in the mix.
Yeah, that lemon is coming through quite strongly for me on the nose, and that spice of the bourbon, a little bit of the vanilla.
So the lemon will be from the bourbon and the Madeira particularly, and it's nice, light and fresh nose as well. Not too heavy, and there's definitely no off notes, which you can get from the wine casks. You can get slightly off notes in some casks. So, but there's nothing there. They're all very fresh.
It's different every nose for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that trained nose that you and many others have. So every time I stick my nose in, I'm finding something new and trying to put my finger on it.
The more often you go into it, the more you draw out the other casks as well, because you know they're there. Your mind knows they're there. So
I know
you do tend to lead yourself into it a bit.
Right, I'm going to taste it. So. That's tough now for me to immediately pick out a component there immediately. I'll need 8 or 9 more sips. Bear with me.
Yeah, and
get my sleeping bag.
That's probably a good thing that you don't
Mm-hmm.
pick out the individual components, because they're then not combining properly or
yeah, there's a lovely balance.
What you're looking for in the final whiskey is balance, and normally you would pick up this whiskey and you would never have tasted what went into it. So you've actually the other way around. Maybe makes it slightly confusing when you're trying to taste the final whiskey itself. But I think you've almost got to switch out what the components were and enjoy this whiskey as itself.
Every time I sip on whiskey, every sip I take, I'm finding something new. I'm identifying something that wasn't there before, and whether that just takes time in my mouth, hitting the right taste buds. There's a lovely dry finish to it. Like, I actually like the dry fortified wine finish on a whiskey. I don't like it to be too overly sweet. There's a lovely balance. There's that spice of the bourbon comes through fairly strongly mid palate, and then it tapers off into a dryness at the end.
Yeah, I think there's a dryness at the end. There's a sweetness at the end from the Pedro Ximénez, but ultimately, just at the very end, you get the spice of the bourbon coming back. So I get the bourbon right at the beginning on the nose, and I get the bourbon right at the end, and then in between, it's really a mix of the Madeira and the Pedro Ximénez really coming through and giving them all your sweet flavors, your burnt sugars and your raisins are all in there, but they come and go as you taste. You pick out different things as you go along, and that's the great thing about whiskey.
Absolutely is. I'm no whiskey academic, and I don't have the technical knowledge of what has gone into every little bit of it, and so I'm approaching this first of all from, do I enjoy it? Second of all, why am I enjoying it? Like, what is it that contributed to making me enjoy it? And then I'll get a little bit more advanced each time, perhaps.
Yeah, but you can get far too intense about whiskey, far too serious about it. The thing is, are you enjoying what you're drinking? And if you say yes to that, and are you enjoying who you're drinking it with? That's even better, because the company you drink it with will definitely improve the taste of the whiskey. That's a given fact.
100%. A lot of questions about availability of Dingle across the United States. It is in the United States. It does have distribution through a company called Hoteling, who distribute out of New York. A number of states have it. Ohio, I know there's a lot of you there from Ohio. Shane, you were one of the first to carry Dingle vodka and gin when it was in the state a few years back. And I know that the distributor is always looking to understand where's their demand in the United States. So if Dingle isn't on your shelf and you've asked your bar to stock it or your liquor store to stock it on the shelf, no harm to figure out if they can get it. Can they ask for it to be distributed? I know it controlled states, the 19 or so controlled states in the United States, that makes it harder to get certain whiskies and drinks on the shelves. But how we keep things on the shelves in America and how we get things on the shelves is just by demand. If there's enough people demanding it to get there and enough people drinking it to keep it there, then everybody's happy. So I do encourage you to ask your local liquor store if they don't have it, why they can't get it. And there may be a legal reason why they can't get it, or it just may not be on the state's list. But I know Dingle is finding its way to more corners of the United States.
And again, With the help of Mary, isn't it?
Yeah, Mary, definitely. If you're struggling to source it through yourself, Barry, you can contact Mary, and Mary
Absolutely.
will definitely champion the cause to try and get it.
Yeah, send a message. Like, put it in the Facebook group, our Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group. If you're looking for Dingle and you can't find it, just tell us where you are, and I'll tag Mary and make sure that she knows that there's demand in certain states. I see a lot of you tagging your states there, from North Carolina to a few other, South Carolina, and some of you mail ordering your Dingle in as well. So that's an option as well for you. But yeah, we'd like to see it on more shelves. My understanding is that there was, correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, 36,500 bottles of single malt, of which 500 of them were cask strength.
500.
Would that be right?
Yes, and 9,000 of the 36,000 are destined for the US. So, quite a large percentage of our release does head across the Atlantic. And we're also
sorry, go ahead.
And we're also I'm working on a pot still release for later this year, and it looks, well, I know for definite that some of that will find its way across to the US as well. So, for the first time ever.
First time, yeah. America's never had a Dingle pot still.
Dingle pot still. So there you go.
It takes a Scotsman.
No, I'm taking no credit for that. I'll construct the whiskey, but thankfully I have nothing to do with distribution or sales or marketing or any of that.
Never miss a chance to bring nationality into a success story, but we avoid it when there's something goes wrong. Oh, it wasn't the Scots, it wasn't the Irish.
Exactly. I know I'll be the first to blame.
That's it. So Mary Ferreter is going to check. You see the comment there on the screen, checking on South Carolina, but hoteling. Isn't this a lovely thing? We can come on here. We can sip on a whiskey. We get access to the fantastic people behind the whiskey, Master Distiller and his lovely wife Faye, and we can talk about the whiskey. And at the same time, we can find out where it is in America. And we have Mary Ferreter who's going to check on its availability. There's a lovely closed loop happening here of interest and kind of purchase, which is lovely to see. All right, so this is 9,000 bottles of this winging their way to America before the end of the year. Batch 5, amazing. Loving the development of the single malt. Can't wait to try the next single pot still. Enjoyed the last one. Shane in Ohio says, "Bring on the pot still." Lots of calls for where people want to see it turn up. Canada, Maureen, a great at flying the flag for Irish whiskey in Canada. Chris wants it in Michigan. Marshall in South Carolina. A very important question from one of your own there. And by one of your own, I don't mean Scottish, but Dingle, Dave Cummins. Important question for Graham. How are you finding the full Irish breakfasts?
Well, it doesn't have the same black pudding or tatty scones, so
no, black pudding's not quite the same here, but yeah, the full Irish, yeah, I think we've had more cooked breakfast here than we've had hot dinners.
We're still waiting for Dave to come and take us up on the bed and breakfast offer.
Yeah.
I've had Americans ask me why are there 3 types of pig on the one plate for the one meal? And I just say, enjoy your full Irish breakfast.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you like your pig?
How many types of pig can we get onto one plate is the question.
Yeah.
We had another couple of questions here while I have you on. I know you've been very kind to stay up so late for me, but there's a lot of interest in Dingle in the United States, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. There was a question I wanted to get to. Okay, so Shane asked about plans for Dingle in Ohio, which I'm sure Mary Ferreter has seen that. One question about the barley, whether you can mention this or not. Is barley local or imported? Putting you on the spot with that one. Where does the barley come from?
All the barley for the single malt and the pot still is from Ireland. We have 2 suppliers. The peated malted barley that I sourced came from Muntons in England. So there you go. That's the honest answer.
I want to mention that.
And it hurts a Scotsman to take malted barley from England, I can tell you. So, but hopefully, as demand increases.
I've not heard of malted barley from England.
Yeah, I know, but anyway, yeah, let's move on.
Well, that's great. So it's all local barley for single malted pot still. Okay, the peated is
yes,
interesting.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
Daniel mentions like 30 months to wait until we might see a peated release, or would it be sooner than that?
13 months. Yeah, look, maybe 4. You can drink peated whiskey younger, so maybe at 4 years old, something to try. It definitely wouldn't be the finished article, but it would be, something interesting to have a go at.
Yeah, somebody mentioned to me during the week that peated whiskey is far better as a younger whiskey than an older whiskey. Is that the truth?
I may not go that far. One of my favorite whiskies is Kalila 18-year-old. So it does. It probably depends what you're looking for in a peated whiskey. It tends to mellow as it gets older. So if you really want the hit of the smoke, then you're probably looking around the 6 to 10-year-old.
Can I also add, he would never buy Kalila 18 for himself.
Far too expensive for me. I wait for
a birthday present.
Yeah. But yeah, peated is a good spirit for drinking younger and probably stronger as well. It probably you can drink it at higher ABV and still enjoy the taste as well. So it's probably a more flexible spirit.
I'm still trying to convert. I'm not there yet. It'll take a while. There's so many other good things, but I'm open to it.
Dingle will
convert you.
Dingle will convert you. Yeah.
Big words. Faye, stick your head into the screen there. I have a question for you. We only hear your lovely voice. We don't see your lovely face. But tell me this, Faye. What have you enjoyed most about Ireland now that you've become a local in Dingle? Like, what has been the biggest thing that gives you joy?
There she goes.
We moved over
there
here
she is.
in October. We left our family behind, but the lads, and I mean the girls and the boys at the distillery, have welcomed us with open arms, and truly the community, you say where you work and they speak to you and they engage with you. And if I could ship our children over here, life would be complete, but they have their own lives. So,
yeah, we haven't left underage children at home before anybody worries.
The children are grown up.
They are old enough to look after themselves.
But
maybe not finance themselves, but they're old enough to look after themselves.
But I always say I think Scottish people are welcoming, but I truly think that the Irish have welcomed us with open arms, and
that's good.
We feel very content here.
Yeah, especially
that's good.
Especially just now when it's been so difficult.
I know.
To make butteries here in Ireland, we would be happy. So a buttery is a northeast type of roll, and Graham is really missing them greatly.
They contain about 1,000 calories
per roll.
Sounds perfect. It sounds perfect.
It's perfect. Perfect.
It's like I was going to say, yeah, a Scottish Irish breakfast.
Definitely, yeah.
But
I always maintain that it only takes a handful of people, doesn't it? Like, it only takes a handful of people to make a place welcoming or not welcoming, and you've surrounded yourselves with great people in Dingle, like that have put their arms around you, haven't you? And that's all it takes is a handful of good people to make it all so nice.
That's right. And we've all needed each other just now. It's been different times for the last 3 months, difficult times. So it's been good to be able to help everybody through it as well.
But
I know
the workforce at the distillery are a young workforce, so we have inherited several more children, and I certainly feel very mothering towards them. I don't think Graham feels the same, but
as long as they don't start looking for financial support now to go to college as well as your kids, or you're in trouble.
That might draw the line there, yeah. But it's truly a magical town.
We have hit on Dingle so many times on the live stream and on podcasts. I mentioned at the start of this, and I had somebody reach out to me in the Facebook group asking me, why do you talk about Dingle so much? And I have no financial ties to Dingle, no any relation other than saying I love it there. It is my happy place. I love the people there. I have felt at home there. Last year, we spent a night out on the Blasket Islands in a place with no hot water or electricity, and I've never been happier in my life. And so when I talk about Dingle, it's from a place of heart and of love, and I can't wait to get back there. And every time I have these conversations with people who are in Dingle, it makes me a little bit sadder that I'm this far away. So if you're making a plan for Ireland, don't make a plan without putting Dingle on that plan, because you're missing out on the best of Ireland if you don't go to Dingle. That would be my stump speech for the town of Dingle.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And, you know, we are biased now. We are really biased, but, you know,
couldn't agree more.
It's beautiful, you know.
So one last question or two, and I'll let you adjourn to more interesting things in your evening than sitting here talking to a bunch of Americans. But is there a chance, Graham, that there will be another program or something similar running again in the distillery? So Sons and Daughters was the next iteration of the buying in on a cask program that the distillery released. Any talk of that at all?
There's nothing at the moment. You know, I think we've done the founding fathers and the sons and daughters. Not to say it would never happen again, but in the immediate future, there's nothing in the pipeline. But as soon as if anything changes, we'll definitely let people know.
Very good. We can't ignore the obvious connections between Scotland and Ireland. Many, as Paul says, many Scots have grannies from Donegal, and I've often remarked in jest that aren't the Scottish just shipwrecked Irish, but you're far greater than that. That takes away from your great nation. But there's great connections between the Irish and the Scots, and I love to see it coming together over whiskey. What could go wrong?
Nothing. You know, it's friends, it's friendship, it's love of a great spirit. And you know, the transition from Scotland to Ireland wasn't hard, really, at all.
No, it was quite a few miles, but apart from that, there was nothing. You know, it really wasn't. You just fell into place. You know, making Scotch whiskey, making Irish whiskey. For me, it's been an easy transition.
Well, let me ask you a very important question. Have you been to Cork yet?
I flew out the airport in January.
That's not Cork. That's the top of a hill.
But we had a really nice driver today turn up to pick up something that we didn't know about, and he was from Cork, and I couldn't understand a word he said.
We had
a translator.
We had to rope in Paddy, who looks after all the casks in the warehouse. He looks after them wonderfully. And thankfully, he's from Cork. So he came along, but then they started speaking this strange language between themselves.
Gibberish.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Paddy had to reassure you, this man is not a lunatic. He's just speaking in his native tongue. He's all right. Yeah.
Well, you know, we've got Paddy and Mark who work in the distillery from Cork.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise how dilute their accent had become, because I can understand Paddy, but the gentleman today, I hadn't a clue. And he was called Ian. He had a Scottish name. But, oh no.
Well, if you can understand the Cork men in Dingle, they're toning down the accent for your benefit, because if they're back in Cork, it'll just be a sing-song gibberish that nobody will understand except our own.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But no, we will visit Cork. I believe there's some distilleries there. I don't know which ones, but
one or two, yeah, one or two. But when you go up to Cork, you'll have to let me know when you go to Cork, because so my mother lives in Cork, and about a month ago, Mary Ferreter reached out to me and she said, could you give me your mother's address? We want to give her some hand sanitizer. And didn't she send up a lovely care package to my mother, who contacted me with a beautiful picture of this hand sanitizer. So when you go to Cork, my mother will make you a cup of tea and make you feel very welcome.
Very good. That sounds
And that's
perfect.
the Irish welcome that is unique.
That's it. That's it. Well, look, you've been very kind and very generous with your time. I could talk to you all night, but I won't monopolize midnight in Ireland. You've led us through a remarkable tasting. I've loved enjoying exploring the individual components from 3 Drams, which is a new initiative by Irish Malts. I suggest you check it out. Hopefully we'll see more of these things in the United States, but it's a great way to learn. And every day is a school day for me with whiskey, because I have no academic background in this. And every day I'm learning from those who know more, like Graham, and probably 90% of the people on this live stream know more about whiskey than I do. But I love people coming together around stories and sips. See what I did there? Of whiskey, and just a way for us to understand, like the Madeira component has its own story, the PX component has its story, and then for it all to end up in one bottle, and for us to have more stories, remarkable altogether. Can't get over it. So cheers, like thanks a million for coming on and for sharing your knowledge and expertise.
No problem. Cheers.
So sláinte. Cheers.
Absolutely.
We'll do it in person soon with Mary and Paddy Joe.
We'll hold you to that. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Faye and Graham, I'll let you go. Thanks a million. I appreciate it. And I know there's a few, there's probably 800 or 900 now who've been on here tonight. There'll be 3,000 or 4,000 more will watch this over the next week. And I hope it drums up interest in Dingle and gets more people. I will put the shout out. If you are in a state in America that doesn't have Dingle, let us know and raise your hand. Tell us in the group and we'll get you in touch with Mary Ferreter and we'll see what we can do. We want to get this into more people's hands, because at some point in the future, there'll be some stories and sips trip that'll involve Dingle, and we'll have one unbelievable night or week or month. Who knows how long it'll last? But we'll end up in Dingle anyway.
A week, I think. Yeah.
Lovely.
We'll clear our schedules. All right. Listen, Faye and Graham, thanks a million. I let you go. Sláinte. Cheers. Thanks so much.
Good night.
Amazing. Absolute privilege to have Graham and where's my microphone here? Graham and Faye on and join us. When I did my interview with Mary Ferreter, the general manager for our podcast, not so long ago, Graham and Faye came in from the rain and added 2 more great perspectives to the podcast. And just like tonight, you think you're just getting 1, you end up getting 2, which is fantastic. I love having the crack, meeting interesting people through the live stream and through the podcast. So look, Dingle Batch 5, wasn't that a great, absolute great dissection of the components that go into that whiskey? And so many of you joining from all over the world, like Ximénez in Oslo, great to see you. Thanks for joining. And people from all over the world tuning in to just get the crack and learn a little bit more. I've always maintained and will always maintain that whiskey is more than the liquid in a bottle. There's stories behind each of these components, from the Madeira to the PX, the Pedro Ximénez, and the bourbon. And then there's the stories of people like Graham and Faye who share with us their backgrounds and their experiences and their joys and their challenges. And it just makes for a remarkable, I just think Irish whiskey is just a remarkable catalyst and conduit to bring people together and to share a common interest, which is fantastic. James says, cheers to Barry and Co and Graham for a great night. Honestly, like I've said before, I just turn up and open the bottles. It's the guests that make this really interesting, and that they're willing to give their time and their insight and their perspectives to us is a real gift to us. Go next time you're in Ireland. Now you'll get to go to Dingle, or you will not get to go to Dingle. You'll decide to go to Dingle, and you'll know a little bit more about the distillery and the people because of it. I'm convinced it makes the experience richer and it makes the whiskey taste better. And Graham said the same thing. Where we get to meet amazing people through this world of Irish whiskey, online and ultimately in person, and to have connections and to have people like Graham and Faye join us and share their knowledge is just, it's so fulfilling, and it genuinely makes the enjoyment of Irish whiskey even greater if that was absolutely possible. JJ, Marshall says, I shouldn't sell myself short. I also bring a turtleneck to the conversation. We could probably just have the turtleneck turn up without me and just have a guest, and you'd just get the same amount of enjoyment out of it. So yeah, the turtleneck probably wins out. JJ in from Toronto. He needs a dingle. Yep, we need to get dingle. I wonder is dingle in Canada. Mary Ferreter will let us know, but let us know in the Facebook group anyway. Andrew says, I'm like a box of chocolates. We never know what we're going to get. That's the crack of turning up here each week. Yeah, look, we're trying to keep this fun, enjoyable, a bit of crack. There's a lot of review websites and technical inside information about whiskey out there that I would have no license to talk about because I'm not technically or academically trained in whiskey. I'm here to bring us together, to have a bit of crack, to raise a glass, to learn, to laugh, to enjoy it, and to make life a little bit more bearable when times are tough. And that's, I think, what whiskey does really well. So yeah, every week's going to be different here. What's most important is that we leave here having had the crack. We laughed a little bit. We enjoyed it a little bit more. I think that's what it's all about. Ximénez says she needs this Tua. Yeah, so thanks to all of you who have ordered these Tua glasses this week. Yeah, so we launched our sip box. Again, I've promised on these live streams, this is not the shopping channel. We're not here to sell you things, but I'm very proud of what we shipped out this week. Hundreds of Tua glasses left the Stories and Sips headquarters, also known as my apartment, for our sip box this week, which is great. So these have been winging their way around America, and I've been getting great pictures back of these. So they're all containing the Tua glasses and our lovely Tua glass toppers that sit lovingly on top of our whiskey glass to keep our lovely aromas in there, and our coasters and all of these bits and pieces. Every house should say that, right? In this house, we drink Irish whiskey. Those have been winging their way around America and indeed Canada. And we got some Irish orders in as well this week for the sip box. Look, the goal of the sip box was nothing more than our community would have something to share. We'd all have the same glassware and coasters and pipettes and things to say we're all part of the community. That's what the sip box is all about. And if anybody wants those, they're on storiesandsips.com. Maureen, thank you. You did. You ordered yours on its way to Canada. Not sure if I have the link here, but you can go to shopstoriesandsips.com is our site for those glasses. I'm not going to make this a sales pitch. Those are just things if you want to enjoy your whiskey with some of our Stories and Sips merchandise glasses, you can certainly do so, but you're welcome here, whether you have those or not. Daniel asks if there's delivery to Ireland. There is, Daniel. We had a few Irish orders come in this week. Sadly, we're at the mercy of expensive shipping rates, but we have an option. Send me a message if you're interested, because there's an expensive shipping rate on shipping the whole box as it is, but I have a smaller little box I could squeeze everything into that would probably get to you cheaper. So let me know if that's of interest. Yeah, so Aidan, you won't be forgotten about. We can ship to Cork, and actually we might have an ability to ship from Cork if there's interest in the future, or from Kerry. John Fleming has been on from Kerry to let us know. Mark says he got his. Great stuff. You got your sip box. Thanks everyone for sharing all those pictures of the sip boxes finding their way around. Some people have been putting very expensive whiskies in there now into those Stories and Sips glasses. They may not be as fancy as the Dingle glass that we saw flashed earlier, but we'll have a battle of the glasses. Here's the Stories and Sips glass, and maybe we'll have a Dingle versus Stories and Sips. All of you tuned in now don't see Faye sharing that. She's in the backstage area sharing the Dingle glass. Group shipment, asks Daniel. Yeah, we could arrange that to Cork. We could. Yeah. Ximénez, I have to set up Norwegian shipping rates on the site, but I'll do that. London, ship to London. Yeah, we can ship to London. I have to add in international rates. So we launched last week just to the United States, and we didn't add international rates. We only got people from Argentina, from Canada, from Ireland reaching out asking for the boxes. Marshall asks if the Dingle glass was gold rimmed. Oh no, just the Stories and Sips glass is gold rimmed. Look, they can keep their Dingle glass there now. JJ, thanks for ordering yours as well. Yours is on the way as well up to Canada. Fair play to you. I know I think you got a birthday coming up. So back to this batch 5 single malt, loving the evolution of Dingle, which is what we're seeing here, and loving that we get to taste the evolution along the way. One thing that we never got to, because we were so busy having the crack and chatting, was this other thing, which we'll come back to Graham on in the future. Graham sent me a lovely bottle of their single malt new make spirit that has never been in a barrel, and I forgot completely about it. But I've not yet even sipped on it, but I'm going to sip on it, and I'll reach out to him to ask him for his thoughts when I do. But I have a table full of Dingle things here. We're big Dingle fans here. Starting with the gin, which we started with way back. Like the Dingle gin, still to me is my favorite Irish gin. There's something very unique about it. People who don't like gin have told me they like Dingle gin for some reason. And the vodka, we're not vodka drinkers in this house, but there are people who will enjoy the vodka. And then I have all the other batches here that I've been working my way through. This one I haven't even opened yet. Batch 3 was the first one to come to America. Here's batch 3, a marriage of bourbon and port. We have a bottle of that there. And Faye was right about the beautiful painting on the back by Liam O'Neill, and that lovely island, the Sleeping Giant, one of the Blasket Islands. And then we've got batch 4 over here, which I've been working my way through slowly but surely. And this batch 4, which came out last year, was bourbon, sherry, and port casks, whereas this year is bourbon, Pedro Ximénez sherry, and Madeira casks. So you're starting to see the different contributions, aren't you? Like the different things that turn into the whiskey. Just fascinating to me. And the fact that you could go down a rabbit hole on each one individually, the PX, the Madeira, the port, the bourbon, and learn more about all those things. I don't know, it adds to the flavor and adds to the, it adds to the story and definitely adds to the flavor. So that's the Dingle batch 5. Good point from Mary. Dingle, world's best gin, 2019. I've seen this on more shelves around America than I have the whiskey. There is more of this produced in the whiskey, of course. And for good reason. It's the world's best gin. Very enjoyable. My favorite gin cocktail, very simple. Dingle gin, elderflower, fever tree, tonic water, and a little wedge of orange or a little wedge of lime in that. Makes for a lovely, and a big glass of ice. Gorgeous drink. You'd lose yourself in it. Lose yourself. Lorcan says the Dingle gin converted him to gin and tonic. Daniel says count him in for Irish group rates. Yeah, maybe we can get a bunch of these to come over to Ireland. I'll see what I can do, Irish folks. I appreciate the support, getting those things out there. Again, that's the link if anybody wants it. Paul says he tried the 3 drams the other week, which again, this is the 3 drams. So the component whiskies came in this box, and it's from Irish malts, and each of them is in here. So the 4 of them appeared in here. So there was the 3 components, and then finally the batch 5 itself. And my understanding is that going forward, 3 drams will be 3 drams and not 4 drams. But this was just an extra little bonus to go in there as well. And Paul says he loved the PX. I'm a huge PX fan, and what converted me to Pedro Ximénez sherry was the Dream Cask from Redbreast last year, the 20-year-old Pedro Ximénez, just a bomb of sherry and raisins and Christmas cake in your mouth, which is incredible. And I love the thick treacly nature of it, which really turned me on to sherry even more. And every week I've maintained this is the week I'm going to sit down and try different sherries one by one alongside each other. And I never seem to find the time, but I'm going to. It's on my list to dive into sherry a bit more. Tony says the batch 5 has an amazing long, slow finish where it's like the alcohol burns off and the sherry floats on your tongue. That'll be in their next brochure, their next marketing pitch there, Tony, that poetry that you've shared right there. So let me know where you are, what you're drinking. We went live a few hours earlier. For those of you who are just joining, thinking that it's the regular time, I apologize. You'll catch this on the replay. We're at the end of our live stream tonight. We're 2 hours and 10 minutes in. It's midnight in Ireland right now. It's only 4 o'clock on the west coast of the United States, and it's 7 o'clock in New York. So many of you may have just tuned in expecting the start of our lock-in. But let me know what you're drinking, what's in your glass, what are you excited about in the Irish whiskey world right now that we can talk about. I'm going to sip on this until it's gone and hang in here for a bit. Really thrilled again and lucky to have Graham and Faye join us from Dingle, and to have Mary Ferreter and Dave Cummins on the old interwebs, typing in their comments. Lots of you looking for Dingle in the US, and I'm sure Mary's trawling through the comments to see what states have interest. And yeah, be sure to let us know in the comments or in the group, in our Facebook group, Irish Whiskey Fans of America, where you want Dingle to appear. Let me see if I've got a graphic here. Yeah, so for those of you who aren't yet members of this group, my question is, what is keeping you? So we have built this incredible community on Facebook called the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group, and it has blown up for us over the past few months. We're now at 5,200 members. It's growing at a rate of 100 to 200 people a week are joining our group. And what I've loved about this group is that there's no selling, there's no spam, there's no memes. There is a fantastic mix of men and women of all different backgrounds who are sharing pictures and questions and just having the crack, hanging out. And it has been remarkable to see the growth of that group, because I really feel it's a community. It's not a place where anything is just pitched nonstop. It is a community of people who have genuine interests, and it has warmed my insides no end to see so many of you share in that group during the week the pictures that you've taken of your Stories and Sips boxes as they've arrived. And it just, I don't know, it makes, it's not that the group itself doesn't make it worthwhile. It's enormously rewarding and fulfilling to see us all enjoying things together. And so that has been a remarkable group. So please join in there. And if you haven't already introduced yourself, let us know who you are and what you like to drink. It's what's amazing is that we've got people in there on a whiskey journey. We're all on a whiskey journey, aren't we? Like I'm low down early on my whiskey journey. Others are much further ahead, but we've got people in that group whose first introduction to whiskey was last week. We've got people who have been drinking Irish whiskey for 50 years, and not just because the rules state it, but there's nobody shaming anybody else. There's nobody who drinks Redbreast 32-year-old shaming somebody who drinks a 3-year-old whiskey. And that's the way it should be. Because if you enjoy Irish whiskey, we'll raise a glass to you. That's all there is. If you come in there and tell us you enjoy bourbon, we'll kick you out faster than you came in. No, we won't. We'll ask for you to tell us, but what Irish whiskies do you like? So be sure that you're in that group. Renee and Ron are just joining in. Hello to Mrs. Stories and Sips, our best friends in Columbus, Ohio. Mrs. Stories and Sips waving from the corner. Hi, Renee. Hi, Ron. We hope you're both doing well. Great to see you joining in. We went live a few hours earlier this week, which is why you might just be getting us at this end. What's that, Mrs. Stories and Sips? Happy anniversary to Renee and Ron. Congratulations to you both. Big anniversary, I understand. So congratulations. Thanks for joining in. So Mary says that Dingle Pot Still is still not in the USA. So it looks like that release that'll come later in the year might make its way over here. Joe is enjoying the stories and sipping on some Powers 10-year-old LVA release. The LVA is the Licensed Victuallers Association, which is the Dublin pub organization, which was released a few years ago. Is that in the airport, Joe? Do you still have that for sale in the airport, or is that all gone? Ed is finishing a drop of Dargaelic. Beautiful. Moved on to Redbreast 12 cask strength. Those are the big guns now, Ed. You've brought out the serious guns. What's amazing about this community too, that's started to build up around Stories and Sips and our physical group in Ohio, is there's many of you, Ed, I think you'd say the same. You joined the group a few months ago, started to come to events online and virtually. Did you ever think you'd spend $200 or $300 on a bottle of whiskey? I know I didn't when I first got into whiskey. The thought that I'd spend $200 on a bottle of Dargaelic, was one on the shelf there behind me. That maybe almost $300 in that bottle is crazy, isn't it? But that's what Irish whiskey does. It sucks you in, and you want to be part of things. You want to understand the flavors. You want to be part of the stories. It's great to see the everyone kind of progressing along their journey of trying different things because they've heard about an element or a component or the story. All right, so Tony ordered his Dingle through Irish Malts. He's in Northwest Florida, hasn't found it locally. Great. Renee and Ron, let me see, 35 years married this weekend. I think we should I want everyone to raise your glass to Renee and Ron. 35 years, sláinte, Here's to another 35 years of happiness and health, and a toast to you all. Cheers. Barton is drinking single malt batch 4. Good man, Barton, in North Carolina. Jeff, the man who said he would never open up his Redbreast 27-year-old, who swore blindly that 27-year-old would stay on his shelf, is now finishing off his night. It's only 7 o'clock in Indiana with Redbreast 27. Lovely. Ed said he'd never thought he'd spend that much on a bottle of whiskey. Isn't it madness? What happens when you get into this world and you start to meet nice people? Jeff, 41 years married and counting. Incredible. That's incredible. Congratulations to you all. David says sláinte to Renee, and Paul says sláinte. Maureen, cheers to 35 more. Everyone sharing best wishes to Renee and Ron. And from Mary and Dingle, Renee and Ron, sláinte va. Cheers to you all. Fantastic. Ed said he had to use a great drop of whiskey to ensure his stories and sips to a glass didn't leak. No, they only leak when you get to the top. And right at the top, there's a big hole. And they leak out the top of that. Jim, 45 years in August 9th. That's great news, Jim. Congratulations. Fantastic. I have done nothing in my life for 45 years, not even breathed. I've yet to hit 45. Few more years for me. Nice toast from Andrew for Renee and Ron. May your days be many and your troubles be few, and may your pockets always have a coin or two. That's lovely. Good man, Andrew. Joe is opening up some 17-year-old single cask. Yeah, you should absolutely pour that. That's a lovely drop of whiskey. I know Shane Moore is a big fan of that, who's joining as well. Ximénez, 41 years alive almost and counting. Yeah, we're the same age, Ximénez. Imagine being married for 45 years. We're only alive 41. Marshall celebrated 7 a few days ago, but it feels like more. It always feels like more, but in a good way, because you had so much fun, isn't it? We've only a couple of years. We're the kids of the marriage group here. The babies. Good man, Tony, 42 years. It took you 2 wives to get there. Asher, look, as long as you're happy, it doesn't matter how many it took you to get there. So Steve is drinking his new Whistler PX. I love you. I haven't tried that yet. Might need more to make an informed decision. That's always the way with whiskey. We have to try more and more to see if we truly enjoy it or not. As long as there's something left in the bottle. That's all that's important. Yeah, so for those of you who've just joined, sad to say we won't be doing this for 2 hours longer. We've been streaming now for the past 2 hours and 20 minutes. We were thrilled to have Graham Coull and Faye Coull, his wife, join us from the Dingle Distillery. Graham has taken over the running of he's the head distiller, the master distiller of the distillery. And it's great to see it in safe hands. We've been sipping on Dingle Single Malt Batch 5 and the 3 component whiskies that make up Dingle Single Malt Batch 5. And those are a single malt that had been aged in ex-bourbon barrels. 45% of this whiskey is made up of this. Another 45% of the whiskey is made up with Pedro Ximénez sherry component. And then 10% of the whiskey is made up with single malt whiskey that has aged for about 6 years in Madeira casks. Lovely to see all of these 3 whiskies combined together and to get to taste them individually, which was really, really nice. Steve will celebrate 26 years in September. My God, you all have a head start on me. Chris, almost 29 years of wedded bliss. You all look far too young in your profile pictures to have this many years under your belts. And I'm now beginning to wonder if your profile pictures are just your kids. How is that 29 years? You all look too young. You haven't had the amount of whiskey I've had, clearly, to age you. 20 days to 40 for Ronan. What do you recommend? All right, 40. Look, I'd say for 40, you want to go big. You'd have to go for something like a Redbreast 21 or a Dargaelic, Middleton very rare Dargaelic, or maybe, I mean, you won't find a 40-year-old Irish whiskey. What was happening 40 years ago? If you could find something distilled in 1980, it'd be hard to find 1980 in Ireland. That would mean something distilled in Ireland in 1980 was from Middleton or Bushmills. And you wouldn't, I doubt you'd find anything from 1980 from either of those two places now. No, something nice like a Redbreast 21 would be lovely for a 40th birthday, and you could sip on it slowly all the way until you're 41. Michael's just joining us with some Powers John's Lane. Interested to see the interview with Graham. Yeah, be sure to catch the replay, Michael. Of course, before Dingle, Graham was at Glenmoray and making Scotch, and now he's making real whiskey in Ireland, which is great to see. And really great interview, great fun. And I could spend so much more time with our guests, but of course, I'm so conscious that I'm asking people to stay up midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, to talk to me when they're in Ireland. And next week, subject to her availability, and we're going to have an American guest on, an Irish woman in America. We'll tell you more about that, which is easier to get the time zones coordinated. Lorcan also reckons Redbreast 21 would be a good one. So everyone's putting in their number of years that they're married, and Joe says, poor Joe, and here's little old me, a single Pringle. Stories and Sips doesn't also offer a dating service, does it? Well, Joe, I think this would be a great place to meet people of a similar ilk and similar interests right here on the comment section. There's very few comment section on the internet that is worth diving into. You could lose your mind and your soul looking at the comments under some videos, but I'd like to think that the Stories and Sips comment section is full of nice people. Yeah, you might find some nice people, Joe. You never know. Or just invite them to the airport and you'll pour extra big measures. Now, here's a question for the group. Would you prefer 1 bottle of Redbreast 27 or 2.5 bottles of Redbreast 21? Whoa. You can all tell me now what you think about that, but here's my thoughts on this. The answer is yes, you want both of these things. But like, if you've never tried Redbreast 27, I'm not a fan of these comparisons of, well, this is 2.5 times more expensive than this, and shouldn't it be twice as good and 2.5 times as good? And why does a whiskey that's 6 years older than another taste or cost 2.5 times more? I don't think there's anything rational in whiskey, first of all. It's all very irrational. And the market ultimately determines what's worth what. But from a preference standpoint, having tried both of these, I would say I would prefer 1 bottle of Redbreast 27. Now, maybe next week you'll ask me that question and the paycheck won't have come in yet. And I'll say, well, I could only go for a bottle of Redbreast 21 instead of shelling out the 2.5 times more for the Redbreast 27. So that's my vote on it anyway. I'd go for the Redbreast 27. But if you can get them both in your lifetime and try them both, or even side by side, sell your car or a child or something, or accept people in to rent a room in your house so that you can try these whiskies. I think people are torn on this. Jeff says Redbreast 27. Jeff, of course, the man who wouldn't open his Redbreast 27 until his good wife convinced him to do so. Smart wife. Ximénez, Redbreast 27. David, Redbreast 21. Marshall, who I know bought a bottle. Everyone should try Redbreast 27 once. The bottle I had is gone. I have another bottle in Ohio that I have to get out here if I'm here much longer. I have to get it out here. Martin says he's going to have to get a second job to keep up. Absolutely. I was going to post something in the Facebook group today. I might post it yet, but I was just going to say, I never told you it was going to be cheap to be in this group. And it's true, isn't it? Like, we see people posting whiskies and pictures of whiskies and their tasting notes and their feedback, and we immediately go out and buy that bottle because we know now somebody liked it or a few people weighed in, or you start buying these things and things start becoming expensive, don't they? That's my caveat. That's my disclaimer. I never said it was going to be cheap, but isn't it enjoyable? We could be wasting the money. Instead, we're drinking it. What was it that the famous Irish Northern Irish footballer George Best said once when he was interviewed, famously, he played for Northern Ireland and played for Manchester United, considered one of the greatest football players of all time. And football in Ireland means soccer, of course. And he was a notorious enjoyer of the alcohol as well. And he was on television being interviewed, and I'll paraphrase him, but he mentioned how he spent millions and millions of pounds on women and whiskey and horses, and the rest, he said, he wasted. So that's the way I look at whiskey as well, is that there's no waste when you're spending money on whiskey. You'll enjoy it, you'll get something out of it, you'll get a story or two out of it. But yeah, each to their own. Jeff says the first 27 is now half gone. Yeah, there's an awful big hole at the top of that bottle. That's easy to lose some. Who needs children? Says Ximénez. Eric asks if I need somebody to drive my Redbreast from Ohio to me. Well, Eric, if you're offering to drive it, I'll chip into your fuel costs along the way. But yeah, if anyone is making that very common trip from Columbus, Ohio to San Diego, that 4-day drive, certainly let me know, and I'll make it worth your while. I've shelves full of samples here that I'd give to anybody who'd deliver some things from Ohio to me. Michael says his Manhattan Whiskey Club are doing a Redbreast tasting next Friday with the 27. Oh, that's brilliant. Are they sending you out samples, Michael? Is that how they're doing it in New York? Because I know in New York you can ship within New York, but outside of New York is tough. That's great if they're able to do that. That's fantastic. David saw George Best play soccer for the LA Aztecs. It was late in his career, wasn't it? Oh, it's getting very, we're getting very in dangerous territory here. My wife says I'm only allowed to get a Redbreast 27 if she can get pregnant with triplets. This is very unusual. I don't know that we can support this. Mrs. Stories and Sips, what weigh in on that comment? No, thank you. She will not participate in commentary regarding people being paid to impregnate others. Yeah, the Redbreast 27 is very expensive. There's no doubt about it. I mean, look, if you're spending that kind of money on whiskey, we are lunatics. There's no two ways about it. Lunatics. That's a ridiculous amount of money, and I don't care who makes it. It is crazy money to spend on whiskey, and I'm going to be the first to say it. But, if we enjoy it, don't we spend that kind of money on other things? I mean, look, it's a car payment, or it's 2 car payments, and we enjoy our cars. And look, we might argue that whiskey gets us on a journey just like a car does. Always keep those two things separately. But in any case, you spend money on what's important to you. What, the comparison of whiskey and car payments? No, one drives you to happiness, another drives you to work. That's the difference. We are lunatics, says Daniel. We're all lunatics to be buying whiskey at that price point, no doubt about it. Yeah, so Redbreast 27, I know the first batch made it to the US, and batch 2 perhaps will be next year. I know that there's no more coming to Ohio. That's the sad thing for Redbreast 27. So keep an eye out for the next batch when it hits the shores. I know other states have been promised it, and if you're lucky, you can buy it from another state and have it shipped to you wherever you are. Ohio is really at the mercy of the fact that it's a controlled state and the Liquor Control Board setting the rules there. Yeah, Johnny says if you've got it, spend it. Yeah, so it's a hobby. Marshall says he's got guns that cost well over $500 for simple enjoyment of a hobby. Is it really different? It's not. Each to their own, and as long as you're happy with it, that's it. So look, we've been drinking here now and sipping here for 2.5 hours. It's only 4:30 where I am. It's the earliest finish we've ever had, but 2.5 hours in, and I'm 4.5 whiskeys in now at this stage. I'm really thrilled that I've had so many of you joining from Ireland. We got many more from Ireland in joining early this week because we went live a little bit earlier to ensure we could get access to Graham and Faye. We've been drinking Dingle Single Malt 5, batch 5, which has been really enjoyable. It is a very different beast to other single malts, and each has their place. And I'm enjoying seeing the evolution of that and the contribution. I do want to thank you all again. Those of you who have been so great to support me with the sip box. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm not going to make this a sales pitch every week, but thank you. Really, really appreciative of that. Chris has 2 more hours to go on the live stream. There's not 2 more hours to go. I tell you what, after talking for 2.5 hours and drinking 5 whiskeys, 4.5 whiskeys, there's only one place for me to go, and that's the couch, and put my head down. Ximénez right. She says she'd much rather spend her money on whiskey than shoes, clothing, and designer bags. Now we're talking. Look at the shelves behind me. Look, that would buy me some designer shoes and bags, but I choose to drink. And instead, I drink the money instead of turning up here with a new turtleneck every week. I dust down the one old turtleneck and make sure that this does the job, and the rest of the funds go towards good whiskey. Larkin says 1 hour and 30 minutes left to go. You're some chancers if you think I'm going for 4 hours here tonight. No hope. Next week, all going to plan. We're going to be doing a deep dive into Jameson, into the story of John Jameson, and we've got a couple of really interesting things coming up. We're talking to some whiskey brands to do some really interesting events with us, where we might do some simulcasts. So we might be broadcasting live from distilleries in Ireland as well as from where I am. So we might even get some virtual tours from distilleries popping up here over the coming months. I've got lots of ideas. We just relaunched storiesandsips.com this week with a new brand, a new look, new opportunities for you to get involved in events. I'm doing some private events, which have been really fun over the past few weeks, working with companies to do events for their teams and for their clients, where we've arranged for whiskeys to arrive at people's doors, stories and sips boxes to arrive at people's doors, and for them to join for online tastings, which has been a lot of fun. I've got a few more of those coming up. And if you've got a team or an employee group or clients that want to do something similar, just give me a shout. We'll do some tastings like that as well. But we've got more brands interested in doing some fun things. So look, I want us to have the crack. I want us to enjoy this. This is not just a technical deep dive into whiskey. It's a bit of crack, a bit of fun. I want to laugh here as much as you do. So we're going to do some fun events and sing out our week somehow, be it through whiskey or through song or something. I'm not singing now again tonight. I sang last week. There'll be no singing tonight. Yeah, so Jameson next week. Maureen says a song tonight. No, there'll be no. All right, I have no more songs unless people are going to sing along with me. Jeff says a song. Okay, apparently I have to tap out, but Mrs. Stories and Sips has to tap in to continue, to take over. Do you want to take over, love? I've never seen somebody run so fast to the door. She says no. Chris says great crack. Ximénez, we'll get you sorted in Norway with your Stories and Sips glasses. Steve always keeps a bottle of Black Barrel on hand. Good stuff. We'll have Jameson deep dive with Lisa McGrath next week, hopefully. All going to plan. We're dependent on schedules as well for people. Daniel says one more tune. All right, we were promised singing. We'll sing. All right, you'll sing. Oh, jeez, put me on the spot now. What do we sing? Any requests? All right, we're singing. We'll sing it out. We'll sing the night out. What do we want? The Irish national anthem? Love, what do we sing? No. Will we? Galway to Graceland. It's not much of a sing-along. We'll put it up to the vote. Billy Joel. I don't know how good you think my singing voice is. There'll be no Billy Joel. This is me singing dubious Irish tunes at the end of 5 whiskies. Which one? Oh my God, Raglan Road. Or which? I'm not good at that one. Whiskey in the Jar. Whiskey in the Jar would be an easy one. Johnny says the night's young. We'll carry on without you. The Parting Glass. Molly Malone. Let me see. What do we sing? There's a lovely song, folks, that the High Kings sing. And there's some great Irish-American connections in the song. And it's called Galway to Graceland. And it's about a woman who has loved her whole life a man that she's not married to. And that man is Elvis. And it's just a lovely, lovely song. I don't know that it's much of a rousing drinking song, but it's a bit of a haunting song. And I could either do Galway to Graceland, or you can all sing whiskey in the jar. Well, first of all, let me ask you this. Does anybody volunteer to join in? Because I'll put you on the screen with me. This will be very easy. You won't know what hit you. But if anybody wants to volunteer to join in a song that is in front of a computer and is willing to sing with me, then I'll sing your song with you. And we'll get the lyrics up and we'll all try it. So that's the first offer, if somebody wants to sing along. If nobody wants to volunteer, then I'm on my own. Joe says Mark and him are still rehearsing. They'll be ready in a few weeks. Yeah, I don't know about that. You're taking an awful long time, Joe. Like, you promised me songs. You promised me songs. Whiskey for breakfast, whiskey in the jar. Ed knows Molly Malone. Andrew says he'll try it if he knows it. John says he spends a lot of time in Memphis for business, so let's hear the Galway to Graceland. This is a lovely song, like Galway to Graceland. Right. Why don't I sing that one and then you can join in if you want. You'll have to excuse me now that I'm not a professional singer. I'm the drunk at the end of the night in the corner of the bar going, yeah, just can I sing a song for you? That's what we'll have to do. All right, so bear with me now. Let me put up the lyrics here and I'll sing along. The real Irish way would be to close your eyes like Christy Moore and sing with closed eyes. All right, I'm going to sing this song. Mrs. Stories and Sips like this song. All right, so this is called From Galway to Graceland. Galway, of course, being in the west coast of Ireland, and Graceland being in Memphis. And Memphis was about a 7-hour drive from where we lived in Ohio. And it's a lot further of a drive from San Diego. But it's a beautiful song about a woman who is in love with a man that she's not married to. All right. Will I sing it? Okay. I need an old sip first. From Galway to Graceland by the High Kings and Barry Chandler. Oh, she dressed in the dark and she whispered amen. She was pretty in pink like a young girl again. 20 years married and she never thought twice. She slipped out of the back door and into the night. And silver wings carried her over the sea, from the west coast of Ireland to West Tennessee. Oh, to be with her sweetheart, she left everything. She went from Galway to Graceland to be with the king. She was humming Suspicion, that's the song she loved best. She had Elvis, I Love You tattooed on her breast. And when they landed in Memphis, well, her heart beat so fast. She dreamed for so long, now she'd see him at last. She was down by his graveside day after day, and come closing time, they would pull her away. Oh, to be with her sweetheart, she left everything. She'd come from Galway to Graceland to be with the king. They came in their thousands from the whole human race just to pay their respects at his last resting place. And blindly she knelt there and she told him her dreams. And she thought that he answered, oh, that's how it seemed. Or to be with her sweetheart, she left everything. She went from Galway to Graceland to be with the king. Now when they dragged her away, it was handcuffs this time. She said, my good man, are you out of your mind? Can't you tell that we're married? See, I'm wearing his ring. I've come from Galway to Graceland to be with my king. I've come from Galway to Graceland to be with my king. Woo! Galway to Graceland. That's it now. You got your song. Go home. Nothing else good will happen here. Joe Moore will put, if he had a golden buzzer in front of him, he'd push it. That's a lovely song. I didn't do it justice, but it's a beautiful song of a woman who's maybe a little bit demented and maybe a little bit deranged, who finds her way to Tennessee and thinks that the king knows who she is. God love her. God love her. All right, that's it. Now you got your song. Unless there's one more there, we might sing you out with. You've got me going. We'll get a faster one, Louis. We'll get a faster one. All right, one more, and then that's it. All right, let me see. Well, there was a request in here for something fast. We could do. Oh yeah, we could do Whiskey in the Jar. Is an easy one, isn't it? Let me see here. Whiskey in the Jar to play us out. You want to join in, love? No? Metallica do a lovely version. Get the lyrics. All right, this is apparently Metallica's lyrics, which I'm hoping are the same lyrics as everybody else's. All right. Galway Girl is being requested. Lots of Galway. Listún Varna. Christy Moore. Andrew says Galway Girl, stay with the team. Listún Varna is a great one. Christy Moore. Okay, there's nobody wants Whiskey in the Jar. All right, do you want Galway Girl or the Thin Lizzy version of Whiskey in the Jar would be the one, all right. The Parting Glass. Maybe we do the Parting Glass because that's what we're going to do. As soon as I finish singing, I'm going to press end. And that'll be the end of the song. Do I do any Daniel O'Donnell? Asks Joe. I don't. All right, we sing a little bit of the Parting Glass. So the High Kings do a lovely version of this as well, who do Galway to Graceland. The Parting Glass is a lovely one, and it's a nice way to kind of to sing us out, isn't it? It's let me pull up the right lyrics here to be sure. Every good Irish concert ends with the Parting Glass. Oh, Ximénez with a great request. Beeswing by Christy Moore. That's a beauty. Do you remember that? Oh, that's a beautiful song. Will I? Nobody wants it. That's a beautiful song, Beeswing. That's a lovely song. That's one of my favorite Christy Moore songs, Beeswing. All right, we'll do this one first. And then if there's interest in Christy Moore, we'll do that one. And then when there's nobody left on the live stream, I'll go home. All right, we'll do the Parting Glass, will we? Song list for the next lock-in. Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away, and all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. Come fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Good night and joy be with you all. Short version there. That's not even a note in my head, but I'll sing along anyway. All right, we're going to sing this one for our friend in Oslo. I'm going to do it no justice, but I'll sing it anyway. This is a song called Beeswing. And Beeswing is a beautiful song that has been made famous by Christy Moore. Absolutely beautiful song of him living and working in the United Kingdom, in England, when the Irish left Ireland to go and find work in the 1980s in England. This is a lovely song of Christy Moore's and his time there. And it's a beautiful song. He didn't write it. It's a Richard Thompson song, but it really fits what Christy Moore did when he emigrated from Ireland. And it's a lovely love song, and it's a lovely gentle song. But if you want to get the right version, it's called Beeswing by Christy Moore, and it's absolutely stunning. It's a sad song, but it's worth singing. We pull up the lyrics here. John says he's turned his 7-year-old into a Christy Moore fan. You could do far worse. Christy Moore is a good Irish hero. All right, let me find. I want Christy Moore's version. Right, lyrics from Christy Moore's own website here now. I know I'll only do this after a few whiskeys, like. Last song, and that's it. I was 18 when I came to town. They called it the summer of love. Burning babies, burning flags, the hawks against the doves. I took a job at the steaming way down on Keltram Street, and I fell in love with the laundry girl that was working next to me. Brown hair zigzagged across her face, and a look of half surprise, like a fox caught in the headlights, there was animal in her eyes. She said to me, "Can't you see I'm not the factory kind? If you don't take me out of here, I'll surely lose my mind." She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing, so fine a breath of wind might blow her away. She was a lost child, she was running wild. She said, "So long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. You wouldn't want me any other way." We bussed around the market towns, fruit picking down in Kent. We could tinker pots and pans or knives wherever we went. We were camping down the Gower one time. The work was mighty good. She wouldn't wait for the harvest. I thought we should. I said to her, "We'll settle down, get a few acres dug, a fire burning in the hearth and babbies on the rug." She said, "Oh man, you foolish man, that surely sounds like hell. You might be lord of half the world, you'll not own me as well." She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing, so fine a breath the wind might blow her away. She was a lost child, she was running wild. She said, "So long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. You wouldn't want me any other way." We were drinking more in those days. Our tempers reached a pitch. Like a fool, I let her run away when she took the rambling itch. Last I heard, she was living rough, back on the Derby beat, with a bottle of White Horse in her pocket and a wolfhound at her feet. They say that she got married once to a man called Romany Brown. Even a gypsy caravan was too much like settling down. They say her rose has faded, rough weather and hard booze. Maybe that's the price you pay for the chains that you refuse. She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing. I miss her more than ever words can say. If I could just taste all of her wildness now, if I could just hold her in my arms today, I wouldn't want her any other way. She was a rare thing, wild as a bee's wing, so fine a breath of wind might blow her away. She was a lost child, she was running wild. She said, so long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. You wouldn't want me any other way. Sláinte, Ximénez in Oslo. Sláinte, everybody. Good old session. That's it. Sinead. Cheers, Ximénez. Glad you enjoyed it. I butchered it, but look, it's a lovely old song. Lovely old song. Mark says that's not depressing at all. Oh, I didn't know that, Ed. Richard Thompson also wrote Galway to Graceland. Ah. Yeah, it's quite a depressing song, but it's a lovely, beautiful song of a man trying to impose his way of life on somebody who doesn't want it. And she says, no, I won't be having it. But there's a beautiful line in there about her refusing the chains and the price she had to pay for refusing those chains, and those chains being normality and stability, but they weren't her normality, and they weren't her stability. And he lost her, and maybe nobody was happy in the end, but it's a lovely thought of what could have been. It's lovely. It's lovely. Marshall says Irish ballads aren't sad, they're life. That's it, Ximénez. You said it now. You're gonna sing with me next time. I'll hold you to that. And if anybody wants to sing and you've got a song, you let me know. And you bring me, I'll bring you on the screen, and you can share the screen with me, and we'll belt out a few Irish belters, and we'll get it going. Listen, we're 3 hours in. I'm done. I'm finished. I can't sing anymore. I can't drink anymore. Listen, enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all your support on Stories and Sips. Thanks for those of you who purchased those sip boxes. Thanks a million for those of you who have tuned in from all corners of the world. A few of you have come in late, which is our normal time, but we came in a few hours earlier. Mike at Middleton is at the Paddy Prince here. He's just jumped on. He's a little sad. Are we doing Dancing at the Crossroads? We are. This is Devil Air's Ireland you've happened into now, where we're talking in Irish and singing Irish songs indeed. Daniel says one more tune. One more. What's the one more tune though? Christy Moore song? One more session song. Sing us out. The Fields of Athenry. Daniel, you going to come in on this one as well, are you? Ordinary Man. Ordinary Man, another Christy Moore song. Michael, are you going to come in on that one? I'll add you to the screen. I'll send you the link. Don't be tempting me. Don't be tempting me. Ordinary Man. All right. Here we go. We have an Ordinary Man request. Another Christy Moore song. I keep seeing, Marshall, you're mentioning Barley Mow. I don't know that one. I'll have to find that. All right. Ordinary Man. We almost need we need the karaoke version. Let's see if we can find a bit of background music. I have no guitar. Ordinary Man. Oh, we might have it here. Do we have it? No. No, we'll just sing. We'll just do the lyrics. So I'll sing without backing. The Stories and Sips Glee Club. Ordinary Man, Christy Moore lyrics. I almost know them all, but I'd be afraid to miss out. All right, Ordinary Man it is so. And then I'm closing up the shop. for the few chancers that are left at the end of the night. It's like any pub. There's always a few to stick around, right? Christy Moore. Imagine a good bit of guitar going here and a little bit of drum. I'm an ordinary man, nothing special, nothing grand. I've had to work for everything I own. I never asked for a lot. I was happy with what I got, enough to keep my family and my home. They say that times are hard and they've handed me my cards. They say there's not the work to go around. But when the whistle blows, the gates will finally close. Tonight they're going to shut this factory down. Then they'll tear it down. I never missed a day nor went on strike for better pay. For 20 years I served the best I could. Now with a handshake and a check, it seems so easy to forget the loyalty through the bad times and the good. Now the owner says he's sad to see that things have got so bad, but the captains of industry won't let him lose. He still smokes a cigar and he drives a brand new car, and still he takes his factory on a cruise. He'll never lose. It seems to me such a cruel irony. He's richer now than ever he was before. And now my check is spent. I can't afford the rent. There's one law for the rich, one for the poor. Every day I've tried to salvage some of my pride, to find some work so I might pay my way. Oh, but everywhere I go, the answer's always no. No work for anybody here today. No work today. No work today. And so condemned I stand, just an ordinary man, like thousands behind me in the queue. I watch my darling wife trying to make the best of life, and God knows what the kids are going to do. Now we're faced with this human waste, a generation cast aside. For as long as I live, I never will forgive. You've stripped me of my dignity and my pride. You've stripped me bare. You've stripped me bare. No work today. No work today. Woo! Ordinary Man, Christy Moore. That's it. We're out. I played the requests. I did it. Stacey is late. She says, what the actual is going on? You crashed the end of a session. That's it. Right, lads. I'm out. Good night. God bless. Stay safe. Stay healthy. There'll be no more songs. Catch the replay. Buy Dingle whiskey. Buy sip boxes. Be safe. Wash your hands. Sláinte, lads and ladies.